High octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Police begin searching a Portuguese reservoir for Madeleine McCann 16 years after her disappearance.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 23rd of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news on this Tuesday morning, police investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann will today search a remote reservoir frequently visited by the prime suspect in the case, Christian Bruckner. Officers have sealed off a stretch of the area which is just over 30 miles from where Madeleine disappeared in 2007.
The Prime Minister will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary's conduct. Rishi Sunak is said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants explicitly for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Dominic Raab has announced he is standing down as an MP at the next election. His decision comes a month after he resigned his cabinet position over bullying claims.
Junior doctors will stage fresh walkouts next month after negotiations with the government collapsed. The strike will run from the 14th to the 17th of June as the British Medical Association pushes for a 35% pay rise.
And members of the royal family have attended the Chelsea Flower Show with the King viewing tributes to the late Queen. The Princess of Wales also made an appearance where she met with pupils at the show's first children's picnic.
Apparently they asked her, what do you do for a job? What do you really do?
Yes.
Which tickled me. Kids are always relied upon to ask really embarrassing questions. And she said something like, well, I shine a light on the wonderful people of this country or something like that, but awkward. I'm a princess, a professional princess.
See, you and I would be completely different. If I was summoned by my school to be there, I'd think, oh, great, a day off or whatever. You'd be going, oh, I'm going to meet the Princess of Wales. And she'll say to you, and Isabel, what do you do for the environment? And you would say, you would go into all the detail and whatever. And I'd look and I'd say, what a stupid conversation is this? Bore off.
I hope that when I do, because it's going to happen, when I do meet the Princess of Wales, I hope you're nowhere near to ruin it and embarrass me and belittle me. I will just...
All the royals love me.
We'll get on like a house of fire. Kate and I are meant to be best friends.
You'll be the typical sycophant. Your tongue will be down around your knees.
No, I'll just be like, Kate, you're great.
But no, she's not great. She sits down and goes, now, children, let's all breed spiders.
You don't like Kate?
I didn't say I didn't
she's
like
not great.
I'd say all this nonsense of forcing children to love the environment and whatever, it's all a bit forced. It's all a bit, yuck. Yeah, why don't you just go and let them pull out weeds and things and make daisy chains and...
Yeah, they're all about, no, you don't pull out weeds anymore.
I used to love gardens when we were young. We used to raid orchards, orchies as we called them.
Really?
We used to organise these commando raids into somebody's garden to steal their apples.
You thieving child. Terrible.
It's all a
With
bit
your
of fun.
stories and what
It's all
you
a
would
bit of
say to the
fun.
Princess of Wales if you got the chance, let us know. Get in touch via Twitter or email, and don't forget to let us know where you're watching or listening from.
Madeleine McCann development this morning. There's a search which will recommence today for the first time in nearly 10 years.
Yes, so Portuguese police are going to be searching a reservoir about 30 miles from where Madeleine disappeared on May the 3rd in 2007.
The only current suspect, a man called Christian Bruckner, was said to have visited the reservoir during the same time Madeleine disappeared. He's denied any involvement.
Well, joining us now for more on this is the former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley. Good morning to you, Peter. Look, this reservoir has been searched twice before. What do we think has led to this latest decision to investigate it again, search it again?
Well, the former detective in me hopes that the prosecutors have got some specific information that has led them back to this location, rather perhaps than it being a rather speculative kind of search, because let's be frank, there's been many a false dawn on this investigation. We've seen many similar searches of other sort of scrubland closer to where Madeleine disappeared all those years ago. So I hope this is very much a targeted search. And like I guess many other people, we would hope that some credible evidence is found.
Peter, I would feel better about this if they had Bruckner by the scruff of the neck standing there with the search parties. Would that have been an option for them? Why would he not be there?
Well, he's currently a serving prisoner in Germany, so the logistics of getting him released from prison over there and then transported to a completely different jurisdiction in Portugal, legally wise, would have been very complex, but quite possibly achievable. I agree with you entirely. I'd have been much happier if he was there, handcuffed, directing the searchers to specific points of interest where credible evidence could be recovered. But I don't think that's going to be the case today.
Do you think there's any reason to believe that he would have had input into what is happening?
Well, he's been pretty firm in his rebuttals that he's responsible in any way for Madeleine's disappearance. So unless there has been some remarkable change of attitude and all of a sudden he's decided to cooperate, and I quite frankly have no evidence to suggest that is the case, if he has, then it would be a very different set of circumstances that we're looking at. But if he's remained his stance that Madeleine's disappearance was nothing to do with him, then I'm hoping they found some credible intelligence somewhere else that has directed them to this area, which is pretty substantial. I'm very familiar with Silvish and Praia de Luz. I've been to both of those places many times. And I'm just hoping against hope that this isn't another speculative box-ticking kind of exercise, and that once again, credible evidence can be found.
Yeah, and all the while, this is hugely triggering, I'm sure, for the McCanns. They've never given up hope of finding Madeleine McCann. I think just recently they marked her 20th, what would have been her 20th birthday. In fact, her little twin sister was pictured lighting candles. So I'm always mindful of that when discussing this story. But with that in mind and trying to be as tactful as possible, I'm interested to know what you think the chances are of finding any sort of remains, if there have been remains, in water for 16 years. I mean, teeth, bones, do they survive in a dam?
Well, I think it's only right, as you've mentioned, that we are sensitive around these matters. There is, of course, a deterioration of a body if it is in water, almost for any length of time, 16 hours, let alone potentially 16 years. Some elements of a body can survive and could be recovered. But if, for example, this reservoir was to be dredged in its entirety, that would be a huge operation that would take a very considerable amount of time and would be hugely expensive. I expect today that things will become a bit clearer, and we'll find out just how the extent, the breadth and the depth of this search, and thereby we might be able to make some more informed guesses as to what actually is happening.
Well, thanks for your insight there. Really appreciate it, Peter. Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. So Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary over potential breaches of the ministerial code. The Prime Minister said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants for special treatment over a speeding fine instead of just requesting advice.
Well, yesterday in the Commons, she insisted there was nothing untoward about the situation. Let's have a listen in.
Last summer, I was speeding. I regret that. I paid the fine and I took the penalty. And at no point did I attempt to evade sanction.
Well, let's speak to the political analyst Leon Emirali about all of this. I mean, she wasn't actually answering the question that she was asked repeatedly, which was, did you ask for special treatment? And she kept saying, at no point did I evade...
What if she did? What if she did?
Yeah, because that would be a breach of the ministerial code.
Would it be? Case. She didn't get it.
Well, look, I think this is part of the issue why this is such an interesting story, because, number one, I don't think anyone's too bothered about the fact that she's speeding. I think we've all been in situations like that. It's part of motoring.
Excuse me, I haven't.
Well, other than Eamonn...
Just to put on the record.
Other than Eamonn, and that's why Eamonn's got OBE and we haven't.
2 speed awareness courses.
Stop it!
I'm just saying, there are some people in the world who have had to go twice.
This is true.
These courses.
Look, but yeah, there's that part of the story which I think is fine. I think people understand it. The second part is around, did she ask civil servants to actually get her out of this particular issue that she had? And I think that's where the crux lies, where she may have breached the ministerial code. There's a pretext here, or this is a pretext potentially, for a wider political issue for Rishi Sunak. Is he more likely to see problems if she is outside of the tent? I'm not going to use the full analogy. Or should he keep her inside the tent where she's potentially going to be more reined in rather than making interventions?
Well, she's going to be
left,
very
right, and
vindictive
centre.
if she is outside that tent. But I still get back to this point. So what if she asked for it? She was
this is the reason.
She was in the public eye. She had a high-profile job. She goes and says, listen, this is a bit embarrassing for me. I don't want all these people sitting looking, pointing fingers at me.
My understanding is who she asked. Totally get that. The question is who she asked. If she'd have called Mr Loophole, the lawyer, and said, look, I'm in a public domain, I've got security detail, I don't want my name, I've just been made a Home Secretary, I've just been in a leadership contest, for thousands of reasons that we all understand, she might have wanted to do it quietly and privately. But she asked public servants who were paid for by the taxpayer, who are non-political...
Who were then only too keen to go blowing the whistle
who aren't
and
allowed
say that
to deal with
it.
things in your private life. And that's the rule that, if that's the case, that would have been broken.
Yes, and I think exactly that point, Isabel. I think Eamonn's right. Look, she's the Home Secretary. She's got security detail. She shouldn't necessarily be in the room with everyone else. I think that's granted. But it's the fact that she was using taxpayers' money, effectively, civil servants paid for by the taxpayer, to deal with her personal issues. And there has to be that fine line between what's personal and what's political. And it is a fine line, because in today's media age, the personal is political, but in this instance, it's quite clear she should have dealt with this from her own back pocket rather than that from the taxpayer.
I think it's interesting that you say, this is a dilemma for Rishi Sunak to decide whether she's, more useful inside or outside the tent. But it seems to me he won't even be able to make that calculation. I think that he's very much set a precedent, not only in what he said on the day that he entered Downing Street, but also in his treatment of previous, people who've fallen foul of the ministerial code, that if a breach is found, they're out.
Yeah, well, that's partially a precedent, but I think there is also a precedent that goes the other way, that says, actually, if you do break the ministerial code, you don't have to necessarily go. Priti Patel broke it. Boris Johnson kept her on board. Suella Braverman herself has broken the ministerial code already with leaking potentially sensitive details. So I think the question in number 10 is not going to be, did she break the ministerial code? The question is going to be, do we want someone who is potentially a rival for the leadership to be causing chaos on the backbenches, or shall we keep her in the cabinet where we've got a relative amount of control and can keep things stable for as long as we can?
And what would your advice be on that?
I think on that case, Suella Braverman is a much more manageable prospect as part of the cabinet with that collective responsibility. And I just think add her to the list of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, everyone else on those Tory backbenches causing chaos. I think that's not a good idea for anyone.
I just can't get why people want to be offended by this. I mean, she didn't ask to get off the speeding point. She didn't ask to get off the course. She simply said, can you give me a bit of privacy on this? I think she's totally entitled to do that, bearing in mind her position. But
no one's disagreeing with you.
We're
no one's disagreeing with you. It's just who she asked. Yeah.
I didn't say anybody was disagreeing with me.
I was just checking you got that.
Thank you for reassuring me.
Yeah, good.
That there's
Just
nobody
checking you got that.
Disagree. No one disagreed with me yesterday either. I have to say.
Oh, you broke the internet yesterday, Eamonn.
So basically, tell us about our new website address.
Oh no, they've taken the sticker down. GBNews and GBNews.com. That's where you send your thoughts.
Worldwide.
Yes.
Worldwide. Look, you can get in touch with us.
Really quickly, Leon, sorry, I want to come back to you because both of us yesterday were rolling our eyes that on the public stage, the global stage, there was our Prime Minister being asked about a blooming speeding ticket. When we've got the threat of China, we've got the situation with Russia and Bakhmut, we've got all the issues of the F-16, inflation, whatever you want to talk about, and we're talking about a speeding ticket.
I know.
It is a bit silly.
It's a bit trivial, isn't it? And I think when you look at where he was, you know, in Japan, in Hiroshima, at the G7 with President Biden, world leaders all around him, and we were asking, well, what's going on back home with your Home Secretary's speeding ticket? It just seems a bit trivial in the grand scheme of things. And Rishi Sunak got a bit bristly, didn't he, when he was asked, have you not got any questions about the summit? And I think he's perfectly within his rights, because this is a storm in a teacup when you look at the bigger picture, and he wants to be focusing on those big issues, those big details, rather than these minor these minor offsets that effectively don't add up to a great deal.
Leon, speak to you again later. We'll wait till reaction comes in. We'll see what folk at home have to say about all of this. But with the time approaching 6:15, let's bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise.
The Shadow Defence Secretary is expected to call for Britain's moral contract with the armed forces to be renewed. In a major speech later, John Healey will accuse Conservative failings of leading to poor accommodation, falling morale and increasing departures from the forces.
Warnings that food prices are set to overtake energy bills as the epicentre of the cost of living crisis. The Chancellor will today meet with representatives from the industry to raise concerns over increasing food inflation. Jeremy Hunt will urge manufacturers to do what they can to support consumers.
The Duke of Sussex is set to find out whether he's won his bid for a second legal challenge over his security arrangements when in the UK. He's challenging a Home Office decision that he cannot pay privately for his own security after being told he would no longer receive the same degree of protection when visiting the UK.
Free Wi-Fi on trains could become a thing of the past as the government looks to save money on the railways. The Department of Transport says it's reviewing whether free Wi-Fi delivers the best possible value for money. Well, it's called a service, actually, and you never get one that works anyway. It says surveys show that passengers are more worried about fares, punctuality and reliability. So is that a good idea, so we can just hit them for more money, more bills, so they don't seem to be too concerned about that? Do you ever try and use Wi-Fi on a train?
Yeah, nightmare.
An absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it's rubbish.
Why are we even bother? So you're now going to pay so it doesn't work.
Same at the airport. I can't bear it at the airport, the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So now they're going to charge you for something that doesn't work either. It's called service. Give people a better service on their trains and their facilities, and maybe they may appreciate them a bit more. Run the sting.
Everybody's been going to Chelsea Flower Show. I've got a bit of FOMO.
Have you?
Yeah, and Dame Joan looks as if that's where she was heading off to yesterday. Hats off to Dame Joan as she turns 90 on the front of the Mail.
It is an amazing turnout, though.
It really is.
Chelsea Flower
and she, look at her, looking so glamorous on the right there yesterday, photographed. I hope I look like that at 90, but I don't think I will.
Well, she's got the hat, she's got the jacket, she's got the blouse, the slacks, the shoes, the sunglasses there.
Yeah,
as
the
well.
mega shades. But there's also the makeup, the iconic makeup, the big eyeliner and those big eyes she's got. She really is the definition of glamour.
At 90. Stay with us, find out what's behind the plummeting numbers of NHS dentists. You just can't get one anywhere. I'm fed up talking about this as well. This is an easy thing fixed. Indenture them all, put them through university and say, right now, sign up for the NHS for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever it happens to be, and everything will be okay. But then I don't run the country. What do I know after this?
First First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Just to tell you what's still coming on today's programme.
A bill to criminalise fatal dog attacks will see its first reading in Parliament today, nicknamed Emily's Law after a dog who was fatally mauled in 2021. So we'll be speaking to the MP who is sponsoring the bill at around 10 to 7.
See that wee Emily, that's like a little person.
It's dog-on-dog attacks, not only dog-on-human attacks on the up, but dog-on-dog.
There's Isabel vacuuming the floor before she heads out to work.
I love
today.
hoovering. I actually really love hoovering. I'm a bit obsessive about it because I have a cream carpet, so it shows every speck. I chase the children around with my Dyson.
I have a robot cleaner.
Yeah, is that Ruth?
No, but this is the whole point of what we're talking about.
Right.
20 past 7, you see, the Spanish government is introducing an app which tracks how much housework certain family members do.
Extraordinary.
And apparently, you'll find this unbelievable, men do less than women around the house. Can you believe that?
Uh-huh.
Right? Well, and why is it? I mean, my wife raises our son, our 21-year-old, to be, to contribute to
Absolutely.
know how to wash dishes and load the dishwasher and make his bed and various things like that. In her exact words, the world according to St. Ruth is, I'm not bringing another useless man into the world. That's what she says.
I just adore Ruth.
She says another useless man.
Not who she's talking about, not her dad, because he was very practical, hands-on, and
was very
useful.
So who is this other?
No, I
She
don't
says
know.
another useless man. Who's she referring to? GB Views at gbnews.com. Okay, let us know where you can tweet us at GB News. Now, the number of dentists working in the NHS has fallen to its lowest level in 8 years.
Yes, the British Dental Association are now pushing for a meaningful support package from the government to reverse the falling numbers.
Fed up listening to it, fed up talking about it, nothing ever happens. Dr. Sam Jethwa joins us now. He's the founder of Bespoke Smile Advanced Dentistry. Do you work in the NHS, Dr. Sam?
I mean, unfortunately, no, we can't provide NHS care in our practice.
Why not? Why not?
NHS care has got a very complicated system. So it's all contract-based. So without getting too technical, essentially practices are given an NHS contract to deliver a certain amount of care. The problem we're having, and one of the issues that's been developing over the years, is the need has grown and the number of clinics offering NHS care has stayed the same. And in fact, the numbers of dentists in those clinics has reduced. So we have this issue where no new NHS care is being issued by the government.
Right. What can be done to put that right?
I don't think there is a quick fix, and I think that's where we, as you say, we've discussed this so many times now. Nothing seems to be changing. The issue we have is dentists are feeling disillusioned working within the NHS because they're overrun in terms of numbers of patients, the need of those patients, and to be able to deliver the right quality and standard.
Overrun, and I presume they would consider underpaid.
An NHS dentist will do a lot of work in order to get through a week. So they'll see 30, 40 patients a day. And that can be quite exhausting. And your ability to provide the standard of care that you trained and wished to provide when you became a dentist starts to reduce, and you feel like you can't be in the system anymore.
Was there a huge pressure on dentists as well during COVID? Just remember from a friend of mine who's a dentist, his wife was still at home with the little kids, and the furlough was only given to people who were earning below a certain amount. And because he was earning over, I think it was 50,000 or something as a dentist, he got no furlough. He couldn't see any patients because it was COVID, and therefore he suddenly had zero income. And it was an absolute crisis for the family and for so many dentists.
I think it's important, that point's really important to make, as dentists are self-employed and they will be paid according to the type of treatment or what they might do for the patient. The NHS system pays the dentist the same for one filling as 15 fillings. So, unfortunately, in areas where people's needs are greater, they can't see as many patients in order to facilitate that need.
Totally get that. So you've got a government which is not in the real world. And they see, they talk about the NHS and, you know, all sorts of treatments are free at the point of entry and whatever, except they don't really count dentistry as a necessary treatment. They don't. And you're nodding away to me because you believe that. You say, well, OK, you may have a sore tooth, you may have a bad tooth, or your teeth may look brown or black or whatever it happens to be. But look, we're not really, it's not the same as your arm falling off, so we're not going to bother funding that.
Right. Yeah, and I think you raise a good point. That's exactly... I think that we have to be fair in a way and say, look, it's not a problem that can be fixed overnight, and it's not just this government that's suffered with this, it's lots of governments.
It is, we can fix it. I mean, simple, I say this all the time. Why don't they just take a certain amount of dentists every year and pay for their university training? And they say, in return, we will pay for all this, but you've got to promise me 5 years in the NHS as a result.
So that system exists. But it's 1 year. 1 year of NHS work is minimum. But the problem isn't dentists moving into private work after 1 year. Most dentists will not be skilled enough to be able to move to private work in 1 year. Patients are different, the advanced treatments you're offering. For example, we offer treatments that the NHS can't offer. So these patients can't get the treatment that we do under the NHS. A dentist needs to be able to train themselves up, pay for their training, and afford that in order to actually move into the private sector. So the issue isn't that they're leaving after 1 year. The issue is we're losing older dentists who decided after COVID that actually this isn't for me anymore. I've got so much backlog that I can't facilitate this.
Quite honestly, we've got a government that knows the price of everything but the value of nothing.
I think that dentistry is a difficult problem to fix, but my mind would go to training more dentists. We need more dentists in this country, trying to take the load off the dentists who are existing, seeing so many NHS patients. If we spread that load across more dentists, more NHS contracts being given to dentists to provide NHS care, dentists would be glad to have that and be able to provide that care.
It's bad for patients, this situation. Is it still an enjoyable profession? Is it something that you would encourage people to follow?
Yes, I'd love to say, open your mouth wide, let's see that rotten
I think it's
tooth.
A nice job.
Nice job, looking down people's mouths and taking blood out of their mouth and whatever every day. Money wouldn't pay me for that bad breath, rotten tooth.
Crikey, you're sitting next to someone who does this for a living.
Open your mouth.
No.
What? So how could you like looking down somebody's mouth? I'm just saying,
no, look, you obviously have to be incredibly clever to be able to do it, and it's got to be rewarding work. And I also think it's something where you can live anywhere in the country. You don't have to be tied to a city, and you get the same rate of pay, so therefore you can afford a great deal more than you could be earning a great amount in a relatively cheap place to live. So I've always thought, actually, it'd be a great career. I've got friends who live in the middle of the Cotswolds living it up while I'm stuck in the city.
There are huge benefits to becoming a dentist, and if there's any potential dentist to young people listening to this or watching this, I would say, look, go into a dental practice, see if you can get some experience and see if it is a profession for you. We need more dentists. It is rewarding, and it is the patients that really are grateful that you're helping, and that's what we want to do.
There's a value to it.
I mean,
increasingly in today's society, we look at expertise, and it's judged that, well, anybody can do that job. We can get anybody in to do that, and you will know in your business how dental assistants and hygienists and various other people have now been upgraded, and they're doing the work that used to be just the preserve of dentists, and now it's all being spread out.
The more we can train, I mean, in the UK, they're very limited. Our dental assistants cannot do as much as, for example, in the US, they can do quite a lot. We can't actually have our nurses doing things in the patient's mouth. If we could find a way of training our support teams to take the load off and the pressure off, it allows us to see more patients. And that's another thing the government could think about doing in terms of the staffing. The issue that we do have is we lost a lot of staff after we left the EU. And support staff.
You can't say that. Well, that doesn't go down well.
And the support
Lost a lot of staff after leaving
the support staff numbers reduced, and so then NHS practices suffered even more. So now it's improving because we are able to train more teams within the UK. But there has been that year and 2 years where we have had that issue in terms of dentists leaving, support staff leaving, and new staff not coming in.
But Dr. Sam, you're not alone though. Midwives would say the same, doctors would say the same, nurses would say the same, and basically none of these politicians can be honest enough and say, we just can't afford this or we don't want to afford this. Stop lying. Train up the people to the level they should be. Because, I mean, imagine, Isabel, you're setting out today, look, OK, I pay privately for my dental work. But say you're not in that situation and you're looking for NHS treatment and you just cannot get it, or you have to wait, you've toothache and you've got to wait months.
I have got an NHS dentist, and I have to say they're really great, and I can see them whenever I need to. I'm really lucky. I don't know how come I've got so lucky, but
it will be regional, and it will be how much demand there is in your areas and how much supply there is of NHS dentists. Unfortunately, there is that issue that needs solving.
Well, Dr. Sam Jethwa, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Sam Jethwa is from Bespoke Smile Advanced Dentistry and Academy. And what we do to get more dentists, how we attract people into the profession, that is the thing. And wake up, politicians, and listen to this, because even you have teeth. Yes, your teeth will rot and fall out. Dr. Sam's won't. He's got the most lovely teeth.
So pearly.
Are they your own?
They are my own, yeah.
They're very lovely. They're very, very nice.
Have you ever had orthodontistry?
I have, 3 times.
Oh, wow.
To try and get it where I've got it now, so I'm pleased. And now I wear a retainer every night to try and hold them there.
I have a permanent retainer in the bottom of my teeth to keep them in. I had the most horrendous orthodontistry when I was in the teens.
We all twisted.
No, they just moved my jaw. Anyway, it's a long story.
Worth it, though.
But it was worth it.
Yeah,
happy with the results in the end.
And you care about your health of your mouth more so now that you're proud.
It's an investment.
Absolutely.
OK, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Good talking to you.
Right, up next, the Royals steal the show at the Chelsea Flower Show. We'll be discussing it with Norman Baker and Anna Mikhailova just after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
We've got to that time of the morning where we'll bring you the front pages. Here's how they're stacking up on this Tuesday.
The Daily Mirror is leading the same story we're leading with this morning, the police search of a Portuguese reservoir in connection with the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
The Eye says the Home Secretary is waiting to learn her political future amid claims she breached the ministerial code. Did she, didn't she? Going to talk about that next.
Another cabinet story in the Daily Telegraph. This is the former Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, has announced he's going to stand down at the next election, having resigned from the cabinet.
Stand down? Funny, Philip Schofield stood down as well.
No, I think that's slightly different. I think he has chosen to follow the money, probably.
What, who, Raab?
Yeah.
Oh.
Another 5 years on the back bench.
Has he got a job
probably
here?
Doesn't. Yes.
Yes.
I don't know.
Suella
Braverman will be next.
Yes, yeah, they're all lined up here. The Guardian leads on thousands of hospital staff reporting claims of sexual assaults and harassment by patients.
The Daily Mail says staff at the Equality and Human Rights Commission have been accused of trying to oust their chairman due to her stance on transgender issues.
Oh, it's all there this morning, and joining us to go through those is Norman Baker. We welcome Norman back into the studio, and the Deputy Political Editor of The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikalova.
And may I just say, if you're watching on TV this morning, you may need to adjust your set for the jacket that Norman is wearing this morning.
I think men should wear primary colours.
Oh, it's wonderful, especially with my blue. We're sort of Ukrainian flags down this end.
Heidi High. They wore those jackets.
Did you?
No, they did.
Oh, they did.
Heidi High. Do you not remember that programme?
No. Right. Norman, let's go to the Telegraph. We were just talking about Dominic Raab. Eamonn's MP.
Oh, is that right?
He is, yes.
Has he had enough, Eamonn? Have you been writing too many letters?
It's one of those seats that actually could be a bit problematic at the next election. It used to have, I think, a majority of 23,000.
Yes.
That margin is really
He almost
small
lost
now.
it last time to the Lib Dems. I don't know how Eamonn voted. I wouldn't dare ask him. But it's a very narrow majority, and I'm sure that's a calculation he's made in his consideration. He talks about his kids, and that's a legitimate thing to say. He's got young children, because it is a terribly pressurised job. And also, I think since I stopped being an MP, it's become a lot more unpleasant. There was a lot of polarisation over Brexit, obviously, but beyond that, I mean, the public have become prepared to be ruder to MPs than they were in the past. So the courtesy has gone to some degree. So, and there's far more instances of emails being sent when people come back to the pub, quite rude emails at midnight, whereas before people used to have to write letters, and they would write a letter and they would tear it up and not send it. So I think an MP's job is more pressurised these days. So we don't know the full facts, but clearly Dominic Raab thinks his career as a cabinet minister is over. Does he want to be a backbencher for the rest of his time? No, probably not. So, you know, that's probably what's behind it. But I think the seat will go to the Lib Dems at the election.
Well, you would say that.
Well, I would, but I mean, it's one of the top targets.
Do you know who will be sitting there for the Lib Dems?
I don't know, actually, no, but maybe Eamonn knows.
No, not interested in any of them.
Anna, then, let's turn to the Telegraph. This is an extraordinary story. A Christian teacher has been banned from the profession. 33 years old, refused to use the pronouns of a female pupil who identified as a boy. Is that right? And
yes.
He's been, you know, forced out of his job.
So this child believed it was a boy, but the teacher didn't believe, no?
Well, I mean, to be honest, there isn't a huge amount of detail in the story itself. It says that this is in a secondary school. We don't know how old the pupil was, but that the teacher praised a group of pupils collectively during a maths lesson, saying, "Well done, girls," and that the people took offence, but leading to the regulator saying that the teacher misgendered the pupil and therefore failed to treat that pupil with dignity and respect. it sounds like there were other cases, but the Telegraph doesn't go into a huge amount of detail, as I said. So
she should have said, "Well done, girls," and you in the corner.
Well done, girls. I mean, what do you do? Well done, girls, boys, everyone.
Look,
now.
we've got a shortage of teachers in this country, especially in the state sector. Do we really need to be forcing people out of the profession for something which he apologised for and said was not deliberate or, what's the word, malicious?
Well, this ruling is the first of its kind, and I think, you know, if you're a teacher, you're reading that probably this morning and thinking, my job is just more and more perilous.
Yes.
I think what we don't need to do is make people afraid that they could, with one word or a couple of words, lose their job over it. But I think the problem here is we don't know just how many instances there were. I mean, there's certainly some suggestion that in 2017 there was a complaint against this teacher from this pupil already. He went on television to talk about it, and then the pupil said that they felt suicidal. So, you know, as was everything, the devil's in the detail, and we don't actually have the point of view of the child or their parents. But, yeah, I think teachers reading it and anyone really working in a profession dealing with members of the public will be really worried.
And, Anna, I suppose the other element to this whole story is his Christian faith and whether or not that should be protected, whether or not he has the right to hold the view that he does, that you are the biological sex that you're born as. You know, that presumably has to be weighed up in all of this as well.
I think it does. It's a bit of a minefield, and I have to say that I don't think there's been sufficient guidance issued to teachers centrally as to how they should handle these sorts of matters, and they've been left really on their own to a large degree, having to make it up as they go along.
OK. Suella Braverman, some of your reaction coming in this morning on her. I despair we have a gazillion issues in our country and the wider world, on our politicians, media, and half the UK population are bickering about who Suella Braverman asked for advice. Dawn says, I agree, let's move on with all of this. It's a speeding ticket. I believe it's all a civil servant plot to make waves for anyone not with their ideology. So, Norman, you're taking it front page of the Times, their take on this.
Well, I don't think it's a civil service plot. We don't know whether Suella Braverman asked for advice or whether she issued instructions, so we need to find that out, and the sooner we find out the facts, I suppose, the better. I would agree that in the big scheme of things, it's not the biggest issue which is going. I'm actually more worried by the allegation that, I think it was the Daily Mirror, rang her office 4 times to ask whether or not she'd been issued with a ticket and was told she hadn't. And I think that's a much more serious issue if the press has been deliberately lied to.
Yeah, and this is a special advisor, and the questions about whether they might lose their job over it. And if they've lied and misled the papers in that, then, yeah, they should
I think
totally...
the correct phrasing is caught lying and misleading.
OK.
As a representative of the press, I feel like I have to...
Thank you.
How important do you think this story and this situation is, Anna, you know, as the working on the political team at the Mail on Sunday?
I personally think it is a big deal. I think that... you know, it's because obviously it's being spun as, oh, lots of people get speeding tickets. Well, they do, but that's not what we're talking about here. This is a very, very senior politician who was first Attorney General and then Home Secretary, effectively, it sounds like, asking for special treatment and using the civil service to do so. If she had instructed a private lawyer to do that, fine. If she had gone off her own back to do that, absolutely fine. But using the civil service, as senior civil servants who've been asked about it have pointed out, puts those officials in an untenable position, and that's what you cannot do. So I do think that all of this matters and should be investigated. And what I don't understand is why Rishi Sunak is just delaying the inevitable. I mean, he's so obviously going to launch this investigation.
He's distancing himself, isn't he?
Well, but all it ends up doing is dragging the story out, as we know.
Isn't it problematic for him, the outcome? Because actually, probably he doesn't want to lose her as Home Secretary, and yet if there is a technical breach of the ministerial code because she's asked a public servant to deal with a private matter, he, in effect, will probably have to get rid of her. And at the moment, she's quite a useful barrier between him and the right of the party who are extremely unhappy with the migration.
It's absolutely true that she's very useful for him there, and also she's going to be dangerous on the backbenches for him. But as it's already been pointed out, it's absolutely not true that a breach of ministerial code means you have to sack them or they have to go.
It does under Rishi Sunak, though, does it not? That seems to be his...
Yes, he's been tougher on that than Boris Johnson, who paid no attention whatsoever to the ministerial code. And I think he will take the view that he wants some integrity in government, and therefore, if there's a breach, he may take a different view from previous Prime Minister would have taken. I mean, it would be possible for Suella Braverman to have said, I think, thinking about my time in ministerial office, to have said to the civil servants, can you just advise me on the law? Without saying that she was involved personally, what is the law regarding individuals having one-to-one speeding, whatever they're called?
Awareness courses. Yeah.
And indeed, there's a piece in the Eye suggesting that some people who are celebrities have had these individuals.
Mr. Loophole, as he's known.
Mr. Loophole. So it appears to be possible to get these. And in a sense, I've got some sympathy with her that if she wanted that one-to-one, because, I mean, clearly she was there with all the other people. It would be very embarrassing and difficult and disruptive in some ways. However, she shouldn't have been pressurising the civil service if she did so to have this treatment. It's a matter for her personally. And secondly, she absolutely shouldn't have had special advisors lying to the press about things.
Anna, let's talk about the politics again of this. Last week she was sounding off about the Prime Minister's migration policy. Could there be any sort of evening the score with this?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think the actual way to look at it is how it's going to be weaponised, I think, by her supporters. So there's already suggestion from allies that this is all a smear campaign. And I think it's easy to see, whatever the outcome of this, whether she ends up going or whether it just blows over, that Suella Braverman and her defenders will say she's being pursued for being tough on migration, where Rishi Sunak is not. And that is essentially the situation, the worst-case scenario for the Prime Minister, where he's...
So there's a political calculation aiming to be made on this, which is that migration figures come out later this week, and they're going to be very high. So does the Prime Minister want her there as a lightning rod, as a kind of lame duck to blame, or does he want to take the opportunity to get rid of her and say it's not working properly?
OK. Fascinating. Disturbing next story, Anna. Sexual assaults on hospital staffs well on the up.
Yeah, a horrible story in The Guardian front page saying that hospital staff, including nurses, are saying that they've been victims of rape, sexual assault, harassment, stalking from patients. So really grim findings. And I think, you know, there's been calls recently for body cams for medical staff. So this sort of story explains why people are calling for it.
Oh, the thought of a body cam on nurses and doctors, for me, that is a step too far. What does the panel think?
It's horrible, but I mean, it may be necessary. And this comes back to the point I made about MPs. It's a disrespect for people doing their job, which is what we're now seeing. We're seeing firefighters attacked when they go and put out fires. This is not the kind of society I want to live in, to be honest with you.
This just beggars belief that we talk about medical staff being raped in hospitals. A daily threat of abuse faced by doctors and nurses. Norman,
should we talk about drug drivers? This is ages between 15 and 77 are being caught high on cocaine, cannabis. 20,000 motorists reported by police for drug driving last year.
Yes, there's a lovely headline, attractive headline in the Daily Mail. High OAP acted like he was a delinquent, which is quite a good headline. It's a 70-year-old pensioner who was caught with cannabis, with cocaine, with ecstasy and diazepam tablets in his car while he was driving, and he was called a juvenile delinquent by the judge. But, I mean, the serious point is that we've now got more people convicted, I think, or found of drug driving than of drink driving, which, by and large, has become unacceptable socially in the way that drug driving...
Yeah, but is that because drink driving's gone down, and that's, in a way, a
Well, it has
thing?
gone down, but I think it's also... There's another factor as well, which is that drink driving can be identified very quickly now. There's a process for dealing with it quickly, whereas drug driving requires on blood tests that take a very long time, and there's a backlog. And if the backlog isn't cleared sufficiently in time, there's a real danger people will get off, because the time the blood test comes back, the time for the police to level a charge is
also,
expired.
there's less of a social stigma from the point of view there's no smell on your breath, you don't smell drunk.
No.
These tablets may be easier to obtain, they may be cheaper as well. I don't know, but there's all sorts of reasons. But the fact is that people do it. I think in our generation, Norman, we've seen the fact that, you know, when we were young men, it was the norm for people to drink and drive.
One for the road it was.
One for the road, yeah, absolutely right. But now, of course, I think more likely people would not lift their car keys if they had alcohol.
No, I think that's right. And in fact, you're seeing fewer young people getting driving licences partly for that reason. My daughter, for example, says, well, why do I want to take the car? I want to go and drink with friends. You know, so that's the attitude, which is very responsible, actually. But they don't feel the need to drive everywhere anymore. They can get a bus or get an Uber or something.
Now, Isabel was very lovely, very happy, very giddy, very excited to see the Princess of Wales at the Chelsea
that's
Flower
not
Show.
true. You make me sound like a child. I thought it was sweet that the children came out and said, what is it that you do for a living? Because it's quite an embarrassing question. And I just thought, you know, children always find the way to kind of make these people sweat. And I was interested in what she came out with as her answer. But, you know, I'm a fan, but I wasn't giddy.
Children are wonderful. I used to go to schools at year 6 as an MP. And they ask questions. And you say, how much are you paid?
Yeah, I once gave a talk to some year 8, and they were asking questions like, would you slash someone's tyres to get a story? I mean, it was deep ethical stuff on a Monday morning.
Good. I hope you said yes.
And what was your answer? Yeah, OK. Anyway, she was looking lovely, wasn't she? And, you know, my understanding is that children are banned, not allowed into Chelsea Flower Show. I think you have to be over 8 or something to be able to go. I don't know how old these little ones were, but anyway, apparently it's all about trying to get children growing in schools and having a sort of interest in, you know, what they eat and, you know, where food comes from. They look a bit older than 8, don't they?
There was a controversial appearance by, I think, Prince George a couple of years ago when that age limit was identified. People were saying, well, how come he's there because he's under 8?
Yeah, I've been desperate to take my kids and never been allowed.
And when I think of any introduction I had to horticulture was at primary school, where you learn to grow things. I mean, I learned to grow peas and beans.
Potatoes?
From tins.
Oh, what? Tell me more.
You could open a tin of beans and grow a bean.
What, a baked bean?
A baked bean. Or
no way.
Try it.
Really? You take a baked bean, you wash off all the sugary, filthy sauce, and you grow something alive from it.
Yeah. Or a pea from a tin. They can all
really?
They can all be there.
You sure you're not indulging some of these experiences of pensioners?
What have you got to say about this story? It's in the Mail, page 3. Anna.
The princess, with the Princess of Wales. Well, I think it's very nice. She said she talked about how hard-working it is to be a princess. It's not just all Disney and flowers and dresses.
Yeah, that's something Meghan Markle found out to her college.
Yeah, well, quite. Yeah. Maybe she should have done all these Q&As early on, and we've sped her in a lot of trouble.
Norman and Anna will be back in 40 minutes' time. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, with the time at 10 to 7, let's bring you up to date with today's top stories. There are warnings that food prices are set to overtake energy bills as the epicentre of the cost of living crisis. The Chancellor will today meet with representatives from the industry to raise concerns over increasing food inflation.
As we have been discussing this morning, there's been a drop in the number of dentists working in the NHS. According to the British Dental Association, it's calling for the government to review how much it pays dentists for that NHS work so that they can cover their costs and attract new talent.
Free Wi-Fi on trains could become a thing of the past as the government looks to save money on the railways. The Department for Transport says it's reviewing whether free Wi-Fi delivers the best possible value for money. It says surveys show passengers are more worried about fares, punctuality and reliability.
Which is not saying that they want to pay for their Wi-Fi. They just want a Wi-Fi that works. And they certainly don't want to be paying for a Wi-Fi that doesn't work.
Do we actually believe that if they cut free Wi-Fi, suddenly trains are going to run on time?
Yes, yeah.
I don't see that there's a link.
Oh, we care more about punctuality.
Yes,
and we care
all
more
our resources
about all
must go to punctuality.
So therefore, that doesn't mean that they don't care about having to pay for their Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is essential now. You get on a train journey,
Can't work.
Pass the time.
Can't pay.
You need 2 hours of being able to work on your laptop or whatever it happens to be. The Conservative MP Anna Firth is introducing a private member's bill aiming to make fatal dog-on-dog attacks a criminal offence.
The bill is called Emily's Law, named after one of her constituents' dogs who was mauled to death by another dog in 2021.
Well, here to talk more about this Conservative MP herself, Anna Firth, you know, what motivated you into this? And I mean, obviously, a very horrific situation, something which you see and you hear more and more about these attacks.
So that's absolutely right, Eamonn. So a lovely chap in my constituency, Southend West, came to see me before I was even an MP. He was absolutely in pieces, inconsolable, because it turned out that his beautiful little white Bichon Frisbee dog mauled to death in Chalkwell Park, Rose Garden. You know, his little dog was on the lead. A big dog had come over. And literally just picked up his dog, shaking it like a rag doll, and he was left with passers-by to take the dog, almost sort of torn in two, to a nearby vet where it was put down. And he obviously contacted the police, and the police said, "Well, there's nothing we can do. This is just dog on dog." And the owners of the dog, wouldn't even take responsibility for the euthanasia bill. And turns out, when I started to look into this, because we all know about dogs mauling people and dog bites, that's actually also an increasing problem. But it turns out that dog-on-dog attacks are massively on the rise. There's only 14 police forces that I found that actually recorded this as a separate incident out of the 43 police forces. I think that's pretty shocking in itself. But in 2016, there were 1,700 dog-on-dog attacks recorded across those 14 forces. In 2021, there were 11,559. So a huge increase. And if you scale that up, because obviously dogs don't just attack other dogs where police happen to record it, we're probably looking at more like 35,000 dog-on-dog attacks. In fact, the pet insurers Direct Line have done a piece of research on this, and their figures are even higher, leaving households, not just with the devastation of losing their lovely pet dog, but with these huge vet bills as well. So it turns out that although it is a criminal offence if your dog attacks and injures a guide dog or an assistance dog or a service dog, you may have heard of something called Finn's Law. Of course, it's obviously a criminal offence if a dog bites, injures, kills a human being, but pet dogs have been left out, just left out. And I think that's an obvious loophole in the law. Yeah. Michael certainly does. And we're introducing Emily's Law in the House of Commons today.
And what would Emily's Law enforce? Presumably the costs of any possible euthanasia, but I mean, would it carry a penalty or a prison sentence, or what sort of penalty are we talking about?
So actually setting a penalty is beyond the scope of a 10-minute rule bill, but you're absolutely right. Of course, it would carry a penalty. It's up to 3 years if your dog injures or kills a guide, service, assistance dog. So I think it should scale down from there. I think that definitely should have a penalty of at least 6 months. And of course, then you can introduce victims' costs. Yeah. And the like as well.
Okay. So, well, Anna, thank you for telling us about it. And we know, without going into any huge detail, people like the gentleman you had here, Emily, would have been like a child to him, like a member of his family. And a lot of people view their pets like that, when that's a whole other debate. And we want you to get in touch with us this morning. Please do. In the meantime, Anna Firth, we say thank you and goodbye to you. Anna's the MP for Southend West.
It does beg the question, what is going on with our dogs? With that 700% increase in dog-on-dog attacks in the last 5 years, we've also seen a 50% increase in dog-on-human fatal injuries. There was one a month last year in this country. One person a month killed by a dog.
The way they're being bred and the type of dogs are being bred have got a lot to do with it. Yeah. Lockdown's got a lot to do with it as well.
Absolutely.
Here's the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Madeleine McCann from the Met Office with your GB News forecast. A cool start out there, but plenty more sunshine to come. Just like the last few days, warm sunny spells will soon lift the temperatures. High pressure is in charge, not just today or tomorrow, but for the rest of the week. And in fact, the rest of the month, we're expecting this area of high pressure to keep things largely settled. Not entirely sunny. There will be some cloud at times, and there'll be some cool breezes coming in from the North Sea to affect these eastern coastal areas at times as well. But having said that, For the vast majority, it is a dry and bright start to the day. I think there'll be a bit more cloud drifting southwards across the UK compared with recent days, and so less sunshine, I think, for England and Wales. And as a result, temperatures a little lower compared with yesterday, 21 Celsius, for example, in Cardiff. That's the likely warm spot. Scotland and Northern Ireland also sees fairly thick cloud at times, especially the north of Scotland, where there'll be a spell of patchy light rain and drizzle through the afternoon. That pushes through Shetland by evening, a break then from the cloud and rain, but there'll also be some additional patchy rain and drizzle coming into the far northwest by the end of the night. Elsewhere across the UK, clouds clear through the nights and temperatures fall. Single figures for many, but low single figures possible in some sheltered spots across central parts of the UK. Then we begin Wednesday with plenty of sunshine, eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales seeing the best of the blue skies first thing. Thicker cloud arrives from the west across Scotland, and we'll see some light showers affecting mainly central and western parts, drifting into the north of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. A bit cooler where this happens, but actually across much of the UK, it's another warm day with plenty of sunny spells and a brighter day to come for northern Scotland behind the cloud and patchy rain. Thursday, more widespread sunny skies and the warmest day of the week, if not the year, 23 or 24 Celsius.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Police begin searching a Portuguese reservoir for Madeleine McCann 16 years after her disappearance.
Hello there, good to see you. 1 minute past 7 o'clock, Tuesday 23rd of May. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Police investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann will today search a remote reservoir frequently visited by prime suspect Christian Bruckner. Officials have sealed off a stretch of the area which is just over 30 miles from where she disappeared in 2007.
Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary's conduct. The PM is said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants explicitly for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Dominic Raab's announced he's standing down as an MP at the next election. His decision comes a month after his resignation from Cabinet over bullying claims.
Junior doctors will stage fresh walkouts next month after negotiations collapsed. The strike will run from the 14th to the 17th of June as the BMA pushes for a 35% pay rise.
And members of the royal family have attended the Chelsea Flower Show with the King, viewing tributes to the late Queen. The Princess of Wales also made a surprise appearance where she met with pupils at the show's first children's picnic.
Right, so you've been getting in touch this morning. Thank you for those. The Suella Braverman situation in particular. Joy says it's the civil servant who leaked this that needs investigating. Rishi shows himself once again to have no backbone and hiding behind ethics committee to make the decision for him. Of course, she shouldn't be sacked.
Keep those views coming in. And remember, a slightly tweaked email address is gbviews@gbnews.com.
Leading our news this morning, an active search for Madeleine McCann is going to recommence today for the first time in nearly 10 years.
Yes, Portuguese police will search a reservoir about 30 miles from where Madeleine disappeared on the 3rd of May 2007.
The only current suspect, Christian Bruckner, was said to have visited the reservoir frequently. He has continued to deny any involvement.
Well, joining us now for more is the former Detective Chief Superintendent Met Police, Kevin Hurley. Good morning to you. Look, what will have prompted then this reopening of the investigation, particularly around a reservoir which has previously been searched a couple of times?
Well, there may be an indication with someone who's had contact from Bruckner, the suspect in Germany, that he may have said something. Or alternatively, this guy is a psychopath. He may be manipulating the German investigators for attention-seeking purposes or trying to negotiate some kind of deal on the other offences he's charged with in Germany, in that he might say, let me help you with this, and it might improve any potential sentencing outcome he's got. It's very unlikely that they're going to find something these many years later in a reservoir as large as that.
Would they be able to find anything identifiable in any way after 16 years, Kevin?
Well, I mean, there's always a possibility, but we are talking a very small child. We're talking water. We don't know if there's any, for example, fish within that reservoir who may have, quite sadly, eaten any human remains. There might be some bones, there might be some clothes. But bearing in mind she was allegedly, when she was left, in her night clothes, there wouldn't have been much. And if you look at the size, it's absolutely huge. To do a full, if you like, underwater fingerprint search in deep water with a team of divers there is going to be really difficult. Even
Eamonn
with
and I were
various forms of sonar, it's going to be difficult.
Eamonn and I were talking about how every time anything relating to the Madeleine McCann story appears in the news again, our heart sort of sinks, doesn't it? And as parents, it's such an emotive story. This will be very hard for her family all these years on. We saw them recently lighting a candle for Madeleine to mark her 20th, what would have been unbelievably her 20th birthday. Will they be getting, professional support every time stories like this break again?
Well, they're fairly wealthy. One's a consultant and the other one's a general practitioner. So they're undoubtedly got, through their own financial resources, going to have recourse to that. I'm sure the Metropolitan Police have deployed officers who are hard-pressed to keep them in touch with what's going on. So the answer to that will be yes. But I can't imagine it will be huge amounts of government resources and Metropolitan Police resources because they are so hard-pressed with many other murders and child disappearances.
Yes, the hard reality.
Kevin, thanks very much indeed. Kevin's a former Detective Chief Superintendent with the Met, speaking to us live there from his home in Surrey. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary over potential breaches of the ministerial code.
Yes, the Prime Minister said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants explicitly for special treatment over a speeding fine instead of just requesting advice. She insists there was nothing untoward about it all.
Last summer, I was speeding. I regret that. I paid the fine and I took the penalty. And at no point did I attempt to evade sanction.
She repeated that, didn't she, Leon Emirali, numerous times yesterday in the Commons. At no point did I seek to evade the penalty. But that wasn't the question. The question was, did you ask a taxpayer taxpayer-funded civil servant to assist you with a private matter.
Yeah, and this is what is at the crux of the issue. This is effectively asking the civil service to do her own private bidding, and that is not acceptable based on what the civil service is there for.
What explain that to us? Paul, for instance, asked the question, oh, come on, she asked a question. She has people around her who are supposed to be there for advice. If the civil service cannot advise, then what are they there for?
Well, this is what I'd say to Paul, is the civil service are there to advise on matters of state, not on matters of personal issues to whatever minister
But the
they're
fact that she's holding a position of state, does that not make it a matter of state?
No, I don't think so, Eamonn. I think that there is a fine line between what is personal and what is political, and this is clearly personal. I don't think her speeding necessarily has anything to do with her job as Home Secretary, and having asked civil servants to investigate this is tricky. And listen, she's the Home Secretary, a very senior person in the government. If you suddenly see questions being asked by the Home Secretary or someone from the Home Secretary's office saying, can the Home Secretary have a special treatment? Can she have this instead of what the public have to go through? I think you suddenly enter very dangerous territory. And I think that's the problem here. No one's questioning, the fact that she should do this potentially on her own. I think that's perfectly legitimate given who she is. It's the way in which she sought that advice that I think is the issue.
The former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, who's reviewing our papers this morning for us, said actually for him more of a serious question is these reports that her special advisor lied 4 times to the Mirror newspaper, that there was absolutely no speeding fine whatsoever. If that is true, what should the consequences be in that instance?
Yeah, I think that is, again, very worrying, and it shows a lack of trust between the media and between those who are advising politicians and the politicians themselves. And I think that is arguably potentially more of a story here than this in itself, because you expect there to be an open and honest relationship between the media, especially when questions like this are being asked, because that is the whole point of accountability. That is what underpins our entire democracy. So I think there is the issue that they shouldn't be outright lying. It's not right.
What about the relationship between the Prime Minister and his Home Secretary? How open and honest is that? Last time you were on, you were talking about he has got a dilemma here, which is to find for her or against her or take the advice of his advisors on of this. Is she a better friend being held close or someone who would be on the backbenches?
This is the question I think that a lot of Rishi Sunak's advisors are going to be asking themselves. They're going to be looking at this, not whether or not she's broken the ministerial code and therefore she should leave her post. They're going to be looking at this to decide, is Suella Braverman going to cause us a big, big problem on the backbenches, joining the chorus of Liz Truss, joining the chorus of Boris Johnson, intervening, interjecting, making my life as Prime Minister difficult? And I think that's the question that Rishi Sunak's going to be looking at, and I think ultimately the decision will be made on that alone. And I think if I was advising him right now, I'd be saying keep her in Cabinet because she is more likely to be controlled than she is on the board.
What uproar would that cause if she was keeping him in, if he was keeping her in Cabinet? I mean, if there are people who are going to be saying, oh, but she acted inappropriately here, can he weather that storm?
He can weather that storm, because I think we've seen over the years that the ministerial code is not this sort of binary, if you've broken it, you must leave, in the way perhaps it was 20, 30 years ago. We've seen a precedent set. Priti Patel was found to have broken
but that was under Boris Johnson. It does feel as though Rishi Sunak is back to the old ways when it comes to professionalism and integrity and the highest standards in public office.
It's certainly what he said, Isabel, on the steps of Downing Street when he took the keys to Number 10. He said he's going to be, act with integrity, act with professionalism. But there is still that precedent being set, and if he can use that to his own political advantage, I think he absolutely will. But look, this is not an easy story for Rishi Sunak, just as much as it isn't for Suella Braverman. And I think the Conservatives have got this narrative running that it's one rule for them and another rule for everyone else, and this just feeds into that. So it's not good for the Prime Minister, and it's not good for
there was lots of body language experts yesterday making much of the way he touched her or patted her on the back after she got a bit of a battering, didn't she, during the questions in the Commons, and he was coming in to make his statement on the G7, and that was, interpreted as perhaps a bit of support for her. And there is the history there, the loyalty, the fact that he arguably got the role of Prime Minister because she stepped out of the leadership contest, which gave him all of her support. Yeah. And many people see that as the moment that Boris Johnson lost out in the leadership contest. So do you think he also owes a debt of gratitude to her, which makes him reticent to oust her?
Yeah, I think whether it's gratitude or whether it's just convenience, but there's certainly a case for her to be in Cabinet in a senior position because she appeals to that right wing of the Conservative Party that, frankly, Rishi Sunak himself doesn't. So he needs her as a bit of a lightning rod for these big issues around immigration. And by the way, Thursday we get those immigration numbers coming out. They could see huge spikes in immigration over the past year or so. And I think Suella Braverman, if she's in post, she is going to be the one taking the heat for that rather than Rishi Sunak. So she is conveniently placed in Cabinet. And I don't think I want to lose her in a rush.
Well, he needs her the way Philip needs Holly, it appears. Thank you very much, Leona Morali. Thank you. And with the time at 12 minutes past 7, let's bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise.
Young people wearing balaclavas threw fireworks and missiles at police responding to a car crash in Cardiff last night. Emergency services and riot police with dogs were brought in after around 100 youths erupted in a large-scale disorder for over 9 hours in the residential area. 2 cars were set on fire and several arrests were made, though police have not confirmed how many.
The Shadow Defence Secretary will today call for Britain's moral contract with the armed forces to be renewed. John Healey will say Conservative failings have led to poor accommodation, falling morale and increasing departures from the armed forces. Your views very welcome.
Free Wi-Fi on trains could become a thing of the past as the government looks to save money on the railways. The Department for Transport says it's reviewing whether free Wi-Fi delivers the best possible value for money and says surveys show passengers are more worried about fares, punctuality and reliability.
They are more worried about those things until their Wi-Fi is cut. So how would cutting Wi-Fi save them money? What they mean is it's not going to earn them money. So it's not about cutting Wi-Fi, it's about not charging for Wi-Fi, which would earn them money as opposed... Because cutting Wi-Fi is not going to save them anything.
Yeah, it's not a big expense, is it?
Lies, more lies. And that's what they want to do. They want to sting you. They want to charge you for everything. They want to charge you for having a pee. Matter of fact, I think they should charge you for having a pee.
No.
They do, because at some train stations, I mean, Euston, I think...
Waterloo used to. I don't know if they do anymore.
Yeah, and
no, because what if you're caught short, literally? You don't have any money and you can't go through the turnstiles and it's an emergency.
True.
Nothing more degrading than having an accident.
And often abroad in countries like Greece, whatever, you pay for your public toilets, which
Madame Pipi.
Yeah, I think it's very good. People who do those and they keep those loos immaculate in the public sector. Yeah. And I often think the highest paid people in the country should be people who have to look after loos. You go to a service station on any of the motorways and the people who are in there, I always congratulate them, I always say thank you very much indeed for what you're doing. Because let's face it, people are filthy, particularly men. I think men are particularly filthy. And the way, you know, when you go into a loo, how often do you walk into a cubicle? I remember I went to a cubicle once. This was at Sky News. And I walked in and it was overflowing, Isabel. It was overflowing with all sorts of putridness. And I thought to myself, I turned and I walked out. But as I was walking out of the cubicle, the boss man of Sky News walked into it.
So he thought it was you.
So I had to wait outside and say, John,
by the way, that wasn't me.
That was nothing to do with me.
We'll believe it, thousands wouldn't. But it does lead us very nicely into what we're talking about next, which is whether or not men are filthy. And according to the Spanish government, they are a little bit lazy around the house. Find out more after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. Thanks for switching us on and for your company this morning. We do appreciate it. Still to come on today's
programme.
programme.
You turn people on in the morning, do you?
No, people turn us on.
Oh. A bed and breakfast in Scarborough has been named the world's best B&B, not only once, not only twice, but for this, the 3rd year running. Congratulations to them. We're bringing you on a visit to it in Scarborough, 7:45.
Then, after 9 o'clock, the former tabloid editor Eve Pollard will give us, I don't know where, oh, there we go, Suella Braverman, her verdict on it. I was thinking, why are we showing pictures of the Home Secretary? Yeah, she's going to give us her take on the speeding route as well.
OK, and your take, very, very welcome.
Lots on dog attacks.
Dog
read
attacks,
a couple of those.
Yeah.
Andrew says, I've experienced this. I have 2 Rottweilers, and on a regular basis, when we're walking in the park, we're approached by other people's dogs of all sizes, barking and nipping at them. I believe it's down to the owners, not the dogs themselves.
Yeah. A lot of you will say that, like Paul. It's not the dogs, it's just the dog owners that aren't trained. The problem isn't the dogs, it's the owners. Bring back dog licenses so irresponsible owners can be held accountable, says Steve. Talking about training, run the sting and then we'll talk about training. Training men, despicable creatures men. Who would be a man in this day and age?
Oh, it's so hard. Get the violins
out. What is a man good for, Isabel? Certainly in your eyes, what is a man good for?
Being a life partner, which means doing all the same stuff that we do. I think it's a generational thing. Most blokes my age pull their weight. It's your generation that had it easy.
There we are. So it's just being a man my age.
You're the one who said it, not me, earlier.
So in Spain, they have a Secretary of State for Equality, and they have announced the introduction of an app which logs how much time everybody in the family spends on domestic chores.
Yeah, so the aim is to try and make everyone chip in with the housework, keeping it looking fresh, in a drive for equality inside the house. Well,
should we do it here? That is the question, OK? So here is the broadcaster and commentator, Julie Cook. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Julie believes it would be educational for 70% of British men. And relationship expert Fahima Mohammed, who thinks an app is just one step too far. So let's outline this, Isabel. What's your experience on this? What do you think overall? You see, first of all, I don't think this is such a bad idea.
Yeah.
I do think that housework and people, you know, the house is lived in by many people, and they're not all women.
Yeah. What percentage do you reckon you do of the household load in terms of admin, mortgage negotiations, hoovering?
I do all the paperwork.
Bins versus Ruth. I put paperwork in there.
I do the car things and all that sort of thing.
So 20%?
But it's the easy stuff. It's easy stuff. I mean, basically, my problem is I had an Irish mother. She had 5 sons. None of us did anything. She did everything to our shame. And then I met a woman and I thought, well, she's not the most attractive, but she's very good around the house. She's very, very good. You are so
lucky to have Ruth.
She has marigold gloves. I did an interview with Hello Magazine once and they said, what attracted you to Ruth? And I said, when I saw her, she was wearing marigold gloves cleaning the bath. And she hit me.
You thought she was going to be your mother. Quite right. I'm amazed she ever even spoke to you again.
Yeah, she said you couldn't said she had a sexy bum or something like that. No, I couldn't.
Exactly.
But I said she had marigolds on, and that was an attraction.
But just to be clear, you're blaming your laziness around the house on a woman.
Yes.
Well, I would say my mum also was in the old school and she still does everything around the house. God love you, Mum. Even though she had a career and was a professional and educated and everything else, so she did most of it and still does to this day. So, and I don't blame my mum. I blame my dad for that. But anyway...
Well, let's go to Fahima about this. Fahima, I am ashamed. I am ashamed of the way I was brought up. And my present wife says that our 21-year-old, she has reared him into the world. She said she's not bringing up another useless man. So she wants him to have household skills. Where do you differ on that?
I think times have definitely changed, as Isabel has said, and I think that we are much more equal in sort of like this generation. And women don't put up with that anyways, where it's just going to be only solely on her. I think this generation, there is much more equality because the roles have changed. Women are out there working. They just barely can't manage on their own anyways. So it's just a very autonomous relationship and a healthy one if you know how to vet and filter very well, that you know that your partner is just going to have that as common consideration and sort of empathy, compassion. And a lot of men are actually very good at doing those things. You find them, you know, in the kitchen, cooking, cleaning and doing things naturally.
Would you need an app to prove this?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Absolutely not. I mean, we are humans. We are not AI, and we don't need to be monitored about basic things like that.
Julie, do you agree?
No, I think this app is amazing, and I think we 100% need it in this country, and I'll tell you why. Although, as Fatima said, we start out with good intentions, and men may say they'll do this, that and the other. In reality, that doesn't happen. In my experience, for example, I do the cooking, the cleaning, the bathrooms, the mortgage admin, all that sort of stuff, the kidmin, as I call it, the children's admin. My husband takes the bins out on a Tuesday.
You are being stitched up, Julie.
That's it. And if we had this app, he would have little pings saying, oh, it's time to do this, it's time to do that, and he would know how much I do.
Julie, could I say something?
Yeah.
I'm a willing soul. I may not be very good, but I'm a willing soul, and I will try to say maybe...
Sorry. It's just, I know that you'll do it deliberately badly, so you'll never be asked again. I'm just giggling.
I try to make the bed or I try to clean the kitchen, and what my domineering wife will say, get out, don't touch this place, leave it alone. So she will say that I will do everything awful, not to her standards. So I try, but I'm not given a role in the house.
I see, yeah. Well, I mean, I must admit that there is a role for women here to step back, perhaps, and not tell men how to do things, because I think we are all guilty of that. Oh, let me do it, I'll do it properly. But I think if men knew how much women did, on average, through an app, beeping them every couple of hours.
Shameful. It's shameful.
They would realise.
Yeah, it's shameful.
I mean, not to have a go at my husband, because I do feel lucky. He'll take the bins out, he does all the financial admin, and he does most of the cooking. But, for example, he takes the kids to breakfast club every morning, and I'm here at work. When I come home, the house is a bomb site. But he feels he needs a medal because he's got the kids up, dressed, homework sorted and out the door. Whereas if I was at home doing it, which I do on a Friday, I keep the house immaculate as I go. The sink perfectly wiped, the floor hoovered, the children immaculate, the hair braided. But so I think I do it better. Yeah. But maybe that's just me.
I don't think the app's going to make much of a difference, because I think it's about changing mindsets, and I think it doesn't go to the root of the problem.
But
if you're just going to be...
But it does.
How?
So, do you have children?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys. Any girls?
No.
Right. Well, would it not be good that they then saw that app and they saw the proportion or a target?
They'll probably mess around with the app and they probably won't even do it properly, and they'll have a glitch in it so that they won't even get it done. Trust me, it's not going to work. It has to be natural. It has to be something that you choose, and that is, again, changing mindsets and creating different sort of ways in transforming sort of beliefs and systems and values in people, so that they don't have to be monitored on basic things, that they should just have consideration for another.
But is it monitoring or is it training? Is it actually saying...
It's not training. No? If you know, you can actually mess around as well with the app. It's not going to be that much going to be, you know, to do these things. You can do that anytime.
Can I just ask you, does it make you feel resentment towards your... And do you have rows about it? And do you sometimes say to him, hang on a minute?
We don't have rows, we have niggles. You know, we have...
Does he know he's born, Julie?
No.
He's watching.
No.
He should know how lucky
he doesn't know he's born. But, you know, on the other hand, I agree with you. Sometimes I'll say, well, I could have done that better. Give it here. Give me the cloth. And that's where I think women have the problem. We do tend to say, come on, I'll get it over with, it's quicker. And I think that's the problem. And as Fatima said, that's the mindset that has to be changed. But an app might make them realise how much we do and G them up a bit.
Oh, they do know how much we do, and they're obviously going to let it happen. I think realistically, it's really about transforming different habits, and it takes a different way of, you know, living and believing in the house, that we are now in a different era, and it's normal for men and women to share and just have the consideration, knowing that your wife, your spouse is tired, and they will just pick up the mess because they just care.
Yes,
and that's a very loving, normal relationship.
There is that saying, a woman's work is never done, but it shouldn't be a woman's work, should it?
No, it's not a woman's work, and that's what I'm saying. A man realises that, and they actually do quite a lot in the house nowadays. I enter a lot of homes, and it is like that.
I have to say,
women
the
are
inbox
working
is alive,
as well.
just pinging with emails, men doing housework. I'm 67, I've always done about half around the house. Lots of people saying it's women's nature, they're natural nesters.
Oh dear. Well, to my shame, I would sit back and think of Sundays in our house where my mother would have made a soup, she would have then made a roast dinner and a dessert. So I take that as example. And 5 boys, we would, like animals, go around the table, scoff it all down, and then go and lie on the couch as we watched the big match on ITV at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. And she would then have gone out to the kitchen.
Eamonn, that is so bad.
I know it's so bad.
Do you think an app would have made you get up and do something, or you're a different mindset in the family to say, well, come on, boys, come and help me? Because that's what I ask my kids.
But what I'm saying is, a lot of Irish mothers were like that. That was their role, to make the men in the house, including my dad.
It's my culture too, unfortunately, yes. But it is changing.
To please the men.
Absolutely, but it is changing.
No wonder Isabel hates men. You know?
My blood is
No, we
really
do not
boiling.
hate men. They are very useful.
No, of course. No, I don't hate men, and I'm lucky to have a modern man. Changes nappies
you're
and all the
lovely.
rest.
You see, I would do anything. You're very flirty. I would do anything for you.
See, we have the power.
Yes,
That's the thing. You just got to know how.
And you know how to use it.
I know how,
You're not
exactly.
hard and cold.
I have an ex-husband who is also helpful in the household when I need. He's an ex-husband, so I definitely know how.
Oh, fighting talk. I like it. Well, listen, this has got you thinking, got you talking.
But Julie, Spain, good idea to introduce this app or not?
Great idea. I think it's fantastic. You know, we're living in a society where apps are for everything. Why not have one for housework?
OK, guys, thank you both very much indeed. Very, very interesting. And Isabel is pinging there in her inbox.
I'm just laughing at you because Bernard has just said, Isabel, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Try and use them in proportion.
But you were very big, Mike.
Oh, it says I'm constantly interrupting. I know I do. It's a real problem, and I don't mean to. It's not because I'm trying to be rude. I just get overexcited, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, when I said you were getting excited earlier, and you slapped me down for it again, but then I just...
It's tough being you.
But it is tough being me, and I have to take it. But at least I'm not married to you. I can get rid of you at 9:30 in the morning. Poor Liam, that's what I think.
Well, lucky Ruth,
knowing
is what
that,
I think.
Knowing that you're storming home today to inspect the kitchen. Say, look what he hasn't done. No, not look what he has done, look what he hasn't done. Poor man.
Yeah, well, he doesn't care, he just ignores me. Anyway, stay with us. We're going to bicker through the break, and we'll be back with Norman Baker and Anna Mikhailova after this. Julie Cook, Fahima Mohammed, thank you both very much.
Mercy. And another thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
We should say,
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
54 minutes before 8 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. Thanks for having you on board. This is Eamonn and Isabel at breakfast here on GB News.
And it's one of our favourite parts of the programme, going through the papers. It's almost our favourite. I actually love the debates
my
as
favourite
well.
part. Why? Not my favourite part.
What, the papers aren't?
No, I can't stand this next bit coming up. What? Get 2 bores sitting talking about a lot of stories you don't want to talk about. Oh, but here, they're here. Shush, shush. Daily Mirror, first of all, leads with the police search of a Portuguese reservoir in connection with Madeleine McCann's disappearance.
The Eye says Suella Braverman's waiting to learn her political future after claims she breached the ministerial code.
Daily Telegraph reports that Dominic Raab will stand down at the next election.
The Guardian leads an investigation which found that thousands of hospital staff are reporting claims of sexual assaults and harassment by patients.
Daily Mail says workers at the Equality and Human Rights Commission have been accused of trying to oust their chairman over her stance on trans issues. Is she a chairman if she's a woman?
Yeah.
Is she a chair? Well, why isn't she a chairperson?
Oh, no, that's...
House style for the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail is your chairman.
Right.
You are.
Oh, right.
No matter what your sex is.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's useful that
I
you are
think
the deputy
that's fair
editor of the
enough.
Mail on Sunday. And I should,
But see,
should
so
big up...
if they did Star Trek, then they would be to boldly go where no man has gone before. They'd be fine with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Chairperson Mao.
Yeah, okay.
Well, those were the
These
voices
two,
and the
they're not-
faces
they're
that
not-
you just
they're
saw.
not-
They're not the bores,
They're
thank
not the
goodness.
bores.
Yeah, well, we've got the former Liberal Democrat Minister, Norman Baker, and the Deputy Political Editor of the Mail on Sunday, Anna Micallova. Welcome back to both of you. Norman, sad story, frankly, a story that, you know, haunts so many of us, I think, fair to say. Front of the Mirror, little Madeleine McCann's face back on the front of our papers.
Yes, and it's one of those stories that won't go away because it's a mystery that's never been solved, and this is going to be the biggest search for her for 9 years. It's a major operation to look at this reservoir and cover all the ground there. And this guy, this is an underworld tip-off, apparently, that suggests that she might be there. And this guy, Christian Bruckner, who's already been found guilty of various offences, described the reservoir as his little paradise. But the point I wanted to make really was that when I was in the Home Office, I actually had to deal with missing persons and children in particular. And I used to go to an annual ceremony at the St Martin's-in-the-Field Church when all parents well, not all parents, but many parents whose children gone missing would turn up each year for this service. And it was terribly heartbreaking and moving, actually. And there's nothing worse, I think, than having a child go missing and not knowing where they are. So
The unanswered question, not knowing.
It's even worse than the child dying. It's not knowing where they are. But the point I suppose I want to make is that Madeleine McCann has had a huge amount of coverage, and I don't begrudge the parents that, but there are so many other parents whose children have gone missing who you hear nothing about. And they just exist now, wondering for decades where their child are.
And as you say, I think as a parent, you would never be able to give up hope because you would feel like you were giving up on your child, and no parent wants to give up on their child. And so because you will always have that flicker of hope, you can't ever move on.
And you imagine the worst. You imagine the child has been mistreated or sexually abused or something else. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Horrendous, absolutely horrendous, and our heart goes out to her family and all the families, as you say, of those who have missing little ones. Anna, shall we talk about the NHS? Labour's big speech yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer mulling over or chewing over whether to impose taxes on salty and sugary foods.
Yes, so Keir Starmer has already said he wants to bring in stricter rules on advertising of salty and sugary foods and junk foods, and he was asked whether or not he'd go further. He suggested that he would. He hasn't sort of actually committed to or anything, but the suggestion is after the cost of living crisis is over, they would look at that. All of this is part of his very big pledge in his plans for the NHS of focusing more on prevention, so trying to take the focus out of hospital treatment and do more.
And I totally get that, and it's the right thing to do. But why would that buy my vote? Why would I suddenly think, oh, I'm going to vote for Labour because they want to introduce a salt and sugar tax, which is going to make my life much more expensive? I'm happy to swallow the medicine on it, but is it really going to get me to the ballot box and tick Labour?
No, I don't think it is, and I think it's very nanny state. I mean, let's be honest, but it's also something that, off the back of a cost of living crisis, and specifically seeing just how much food prices have gone up, people will not appreciate being told what they can or cannot buy. But I think the general theme of trying to come up with policy that makes people healthier is a good thing, and people will support that because they know just how much the NHS is struggling, and how much, if you try and tackle the problems earlier, that's a good thing. I mean, they're also, for example, talking tough on vaping, which a lot of people will be, especially parents of kids who've been affected by the spread of vapes.
And as you say,
views on.
Yeah, and I can't remember which paper it was in. I don't think it's the Telegraph, but I definitely read in one of the papers this morning that there was a poll showing there is an appetite from the public. See what I'm doing this morning?
Great.
There is an appetite for taxes and pressure to be built up on the food sector to try and make it healthier. So I think the public can understand why that would be a good thing.
I can understand, but I'm not sure it would make me vote for a party. Also, I would want the money ring-fenced. I'd want it put into the NHS or something like that, not just disappear.
There's an issue here, actually, that preventative medicine or preventative action is absolutely the right thing to do to try and deal with problems as they arrive before the NHS had an expensive bill at the end. But the trouble is that you've got to invest money in prevention, notwithstanding taxes. You've got to invest money in this. At the same time, you haven't yet solved the pipeline, and therefore you're increasing the amount of public money you have to spend before you actually see the benefits some years later.
Yes.
And that's why it's not been done, I think.
Well, and also, Norman, what really is the story is that by focusing more on prevention, investing more in prevention, the reality is money will have to be taken out of hospitals,
That's right.
and probably hospitals will have to close, which is how countries who do this have gone about it.
Right, here's another story getting me hot under the collar, Norman. This is in The Guardian, page 15. We're covering this as well. So rail passengers in England could lose their access to Wi-Fi. It's the reasoning put forward. Passengers seem to care more about rail fares and timetable punctuality, which of course they do.
Yes.
But it's not saying that anybody wants to pay for their Wi-Fi.
Well, this is the most absurd idea I've heard today. It's absurd because there's a problem that there aren't enough people using trains. They've all come back from COVID. So what do you do when people aren't using trains? You make the offer worse and less attractive than it is at the present time.
Correct.
What a bonkers idea.
Yeah.
Awful idea.
Terrible idea. And this is the problem comes down to this, is that there's a disconnect between the Treasury and the Department for Transport. Because the Treasury are obsessed, and I don't blame them in a way, with saving money. They're looking at saving money, cutting costs.
Excuse me, they're not saving money, but they could be earning money by charging for Wi-Fi.
Well, they could do other things, but at the moment the government, through the Treasury, is busy trying to reduce the cost of rail. Now, there is wastage in rail.
Yes.
But what they don't do, they don't ever look at income generation. How can we get more people on trains?
Yes.
How can we increase the business? How can we get more money into the till? That's what they don't do.
You say they're obsessed with saving money in the Department for Transport, but yet, you know, they're being asked for these huge pay rises all the time in all of these industrial cases where we know that train drivers and train operators, I don't want to get into all the ins and outs of it, but they are paid really well per head. When you think of what they were subsidised...
I disagree with you with that.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, you're talking about trying to make savings. Well, perhaps it's because they're having to pay these huge wages.
Well, so just cut staff and just have automation. Whatever. What you're saying is don't pay people for doing an honest job.
No, everybody knows that train drivers are paid disproportionately highly compared to other people of the same level of skill.
Let me be someone who brings you two together, perhaps. The people who are grotesquely overpaid in the rail industry work for Network Rail. If you look at the top people who are paid huge salaries in this country, a disproportionate number in Network Rail, there's plenty of people there who could actually be having paid less, to be honest with you.
On an administration level as opposed to an operational level.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, no, I could see that. But, I mean, and who came up? So you think this is the Treasury that's come up with this idea?
The Department for Transport's been told to save money. This is what's happened. And they've had to scrabble around. And they don't want to save money by taking services out, by sacking staff. So they come up with this idea of reducing Wi-Fi. But, I mean, the whole basis of the thing is wrong. The challenge should be, how can we get more people on trains?
I mean, imagine like getting onto a train, not having access to Wi-Fi over a 2 or 3 hour journey, and then having to pay for it and it being equally as bad as it is now.
Well, indeed, that's right. But look, I do some work for the Campaign for Better Transport. We've been busy trying to persuade businesses to take the railway rather than take flights, because it makes sense for all sorts of reasons. How does this help to get the business community on trains but they can't use Wi-Fi?
No, we're all in favour of that. That's good.
Anna, can we talk about air travel? Yesterday, I think it was Rachel Reeves was being accused of hypocrisy for being on a £4,000 business class flight to New York for a big conference. And yet today we hear the Foreign Secretary has been on a £40 million VIP plane chartered at the expense of the British taxpayer.
Yeah, so this is the Mirror and the Guardian's written a story about James Cleverly flying on a Latin American tour in a private jet, and the thing that's made the story for them is that it's a jet of a similar type seen as Succession. So the show about the billionaire media mogul. Yeah, lots of fun colours. So there's a queen-size bed, there's a private bathroom, and criticism of just how much it costs. Now, I have to say, the tour that James Cleverly went on is an 8-day tour of, I imagine, just as many countries. And I've been on tours like that with past foreign secretaries, also in private jets, because this isn't something that's new. And you do need to be able to fly. I mean, those tours are punishing. You spend half a day in a country, you get up and you have to fly somewhere else for 8 hours. So I think begrudging the foreign secretary, who is meant to represent the country on the world stage and pack in a lot of visits in a very short space of time, is should be slightly factored in here. What do they want them to take the local train there?
To do
use the Wi-Fi.
video conferencing.
Yeah.
Norman, any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think I understand that argument, actually. It's not a good look, but I understand why the conclusion may have been reached. I think what's much less justifiable is the fact that the Prime Minister, for example, took a helicopter from London to Southampton when there's a perfectly decent train service, and he had to go out to Northolt to get the helicopter, so he actually probably took more time getting to Southampton than if he got on the train from Waterloo.
Do you remember Just Call Me Dave Cameron, where he said when he was going to be Prime Minister he would get a bicycle to Downing Street and things, and he didn't want outriders and whatever. I mean, there's other nonsense.
But do you know what he did with his bicycle? He was photographed cycling to Downing Street on his bicycle, and there was a car behind him with his red box in it.
Yeah, and security people in it, whatever. I mean, I will say this quite simply. If you arrive on an EasyJet plane to a foreign country, representing the country, you're seen as yellow pack, as cheapskate, as low rent, whatever. If you act the part, if you look the part, you'll be seen as the part. So you need big cars, outriders. You don't get the Americans doing this. You don't get the French doing this. You don't get the Germans doing this. You've got to be considered seriously on the big stage. So I think big planes, big cars, big motorbikes. That's what you need to do.
Well, I don't know. There's also a carbon issue which people have to present an image of being...
Well, big electric cars then. Right?
But I mean, you know, I can tell you when the Chinese Transport Minister came across to see me when I was in the Department of Transport, and he was arriving at Gatwick, and the civil servant said to him, the best way is we'll meet you at Gatwick, we'll get you on the Gatwick Express up to London, first class, and then we'll pay a car for you at Victoria. And the Chinese said, no, we can't possibly have the minister in a train. Yeah. He's got to be in a car. And the civil service said to him quite rightly, it's going to take you hours to get from Gatwick to London by car.
No, but he'll look good.
But it'll look good. It took him 3.5 hours to get from Gatwick to London by car. It's half an hour on the train.
Yeah, but he'll have his own Wi-Fi, his own phones, everything.
He could have Wi-Fi on the train, so it hadn't been stopped at that point.
Let's talk about dentistry. A real crisis in the sector, and the number of dentists treating NHS patients falling to the lowest level in a decade. This has got to be a quick one, I'm being told, Norman.
Yeah, it's a 10-year low. It's a very sad story, but the point is not simply the number of NHS dentists. The issue is that anyone who wants to have a decent dental treatment has to go private. That's where we got to in this country. I mean, NHS dentistry is really where you go if you haven't got any money, which is a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, and the next time the guys come back, they're going to be talking about bendy bananas. How bendy should a banana be? Let us know, 10 to 8 exactly. Let's bring you up to date with the news. Young people wearing balaclavas threw fireworks and missiles at police responding to a car crash in Cardiff last night. Emergency services and riot police with dogs were brought in after over 100 youths erupted in a large-scale disorder for over 9 hours. 2 cars were set on fire. Several arrests were made.
Figures out this morning show the government borrowing has ballooned to £25.6 billion in the last month. That's the second highest figure for April on record. The Office for National Statistics puts it down to the energy support schemes, higher benefit payments and rising debt interest.
Drivers being warned to expect long delays over the bank holiday weekend. Yes, another one, which is forecast to be the busiest on the road since before the pandemic. Research by the RAC suggests more than 90 million car journeys will be made, with some journeys on Friday expected to take 3 times longer than usual. wonderful bed and breakfast. This is in Scarborough, and it has been named the best in the whole world, not only for this year, but for the 3rd year in a row.
Yes, it was ranked higher than the Ritz in London and even the Savoy. It's called the Toulson Court. We actually spoke to them a year ago when they won it for the 2nd time. It's a short walk from Scarborough Beach and is run by a married couple.
Angela and James Rushton. Let's go to Anna Riley, who's there savouring the flavour for us this morning with Angela and James. Hello, everyone, and congratulations.
Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Yes, 2 very happy owners here at the Toulson Court getting that award from TripAdvisor, the best B&B in the world for the 3rd time running. How are you both feeling?
We're delighted, we're over the moon. I mean, it's a fantastic achievement, not just to do it once, that was sort of unbelievable, but to do it twice and now 3 times. And nobody's ever done it 3 times, so it's even more special for us.
And was it something you were expecting?
No, not. We didn't expect it first time. We never thought that an ordinary bed and breakfast in Scarborough could become the best B&B in the world. I mean, it just goes to show what we can offer, but what also Scarborough can offer everybody.
And why do you think you have won this award again?
I think it probably comes down to how well we look after our guests. I say guests, but we really do treat them like our friends and family. If it's their birthday, they'll get a little card and a present, and if it's their anniversary, then we'll make a fuss and maybe put some flowers on the table. You know, we always try and go that extra mile for our guests.
And you were saying a lot of it's word of mouth, isn't it, the recommendations that people come?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a big repeat business, and then the new people that are coming through us are coming directly to us through word of mouth from friends and family who've stayed with us, or if people are putting a Facebook post on, they said, oh, you've stayed at the Toulson Court. We are becoming a name now, but it's Scarborough as a location that draws a lot of people in.
Yeah, why do people love Scarborough so much?
There's just so much to do. I mean, there's a location-wise, you can go to York, you can go to Filey, Bridlington, you can go up the coast to Whitby, so there's a central location that's there, but there's loads of sort of 3 things you can do, which is very important in the current marketplace. There's fantastic walks, there's lovely beaches, there's lots of free entertainment, there's also lots of entertainment on an evening for you to do and see shows at the Stephen Joseph Theatre, the YMCA, the Open Air Theatre, the Spa. The list is endless of things to do. All the pubs and clubs have bands and karaoke and things on, so it's getting people in that happy holiday mode when they come.
Thank you so much. Thank you, James. Thank you, Angela, and congratulations again. And it's a bargain price to come and stay here as well, £100 a night, and you get a lovely breakfast with a singing chef. Who could ask for more?
Yeah, what's on the agenda for breakfast? Are you going to have breakfast this morning, Anna?
I'd love to. I know you do a full English, don't you?
You have a full English. You're more than welcome to stay for full English. It's nearly breakfast time.
And I'll listen to James singing as well.
Oh, take advantage of all of that. Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much indeed. The lovely thing about Angela and James is they look clean. Not only their premises clean and tidy and whatever, but they look welcoming. They look lovely. Have they been on 4 in a bed, incidentally, Anna?
You've not been on 4 in a bed, have you? But you've been on Channel 5 that's showing this week.
We're going on Channel 5 on Thursday, Bargain Loving Brits by the Sun, and that is by the sea, sorry, not the sun. 5 p.m, Channel 5, and you will meet the singing chef in person.
Tune in.
Tune in. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much indeed. Angela and James, their bed and breakfast in Scarborough. And the interesting thing is, when you think of, it's a particularly British thing. I mean, you don't sort of think, I'm going on my holidays in Spain, I'm going to stay in a bed and breakfast, or I'm going to Poland and I'm going to stay in a bed and breakfast.
I want to know if any of our viewers or listeners have ever stayed there. Chances are some have, and if they have, what did you think of it? Let us know.
Now, I have to say, I have never even been to Scarborough. I've seen posters of Scarborough and things.
Actually, now I think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go.
Well, there, Angela and James offer us a bed. That'll be good. And a nice breakfast and a sing-song in the morning, all sorts of things, all good British stuff. So there they are, the best B&B in the world for the 3rd year in a row.
Do stay with us. We're going to have more for you in just a moment on that search for Madeleine McCann, as well as your forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office with your GB News forecast. A cool start out there, but plenty more sunshine to come, just like the last few days. Warm sunny spells will soon lift the temperatures. High pressure is in charge, not just today or tomorrow, but for the rest of the week. And in fact, the rest of the month, we're expecting this area of high pressure to keep things largely settled. Not entirely sunny. There will be some cloud at times, and there'll be some cool breezes coming in from the North Sea to affect these eastern coastal areas at times as well. But having said that, for the vast majority, it is a dry and bright start to the day. I think there'll be a bit more cloud drifting southwards across the UK compared with recent days, and so less sunshine, I think, for England and Wales, and as a result, temperatures a little lower compared with yesterday, 21 Celsius, for example, in Cardiff. That's the likely warm spot. Scotland and Northern Ireland also sees fairly thick cloud at times, especially the north of Scotland, where there'll be a spell of patchy light rain and drizzle through the afternoon. That pushes through Shetland by evening, a break then from the cloud and rain, but there'll also be some additional patchy rain and drizzle coming into the far northwest by the end of the night. Elsewhere across the UK, clouds clear through the nights and temperatures fall. Single figures for many, but low single figures possible in some sheltered spots across central parts of the UK. Then we begin Wednesday with plenty of sunshine. Eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales seeing the best of the blue skies first thing. Thicker cloud arrives from the west across Scotland, and we'll see some light showers affecting mainly central and western parts, drifting into the north of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. A bit cooler where this happens, but actually across much of the UK, it's another warm day with plenty of sunny spells and a brighter day to come for northern Scotland behind the cloud and patchy rain. Thursday, more widespread sunny skies and the warmest day of the week, if not the year, 23 or 24 Celsius.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Police begin searching a Portuguese reservoir for Madeleine McCann, 16 years after her disappearance. Very good morning, welcome to the programme. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday the 23rd of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's what's leading the news this morning. Police investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann will today search a remote reservoir frequently visited by the prime suspect, Christian Bruckner. Officers have sealed off a stretch of the area, which is just over 30 miles from where she disappeared in 2007. Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary's conduct. The PM is said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants explicitly for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Dominic Raab has announced he's standing down as an MP at the next election. His decision comes a month after he resigned his cabinet position over bullying claims.
Junior doctors will stage fresh walkouts next month after negotiations with the government collapsed. The strike will run from the 14th to the 17th of June as the British Medical Association pushes for a 35% pay rise.
And members of the royal family and lots of celebs attended the Chelsea Flower Show yesterday. The King viewed tributes to the late Queen. The Princess of Wales also made an appearance where she met with pupils at the show's first children's picnic.
And we love to hear from you. Lots of you have been doing so. Thank you so much. Lots of your emails have been making us giggle about men doing housework being monitored on this new app. Do keep your thoughts coming in this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com.
So our top story on this Tuesday morning is an active search for Madeleine McCann will recommence today for the first time in nearly 10 years.
Portuguese police will search a reservoir about 30 miles from where Madeleine disappeared on May the 3rd in 2007.
The only current suspect, Christian Bruckner, was said to have visited the reservoir frequently. He's denied any involvement. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is at the scene in Portugal.
Well, here at the Arad Dam, the police are here in numbers now as they prepare to begin what will be the first full day of searching at this site. It's about 20 miles or so from Praia da Luz, of course, that holiday resort where Madeleine McCann disappeared from back in 2007. I'm just going to step out of the way for a second so we can give you a look further down there. Now, what you're looking at in this area is sort of logistics base for quite a few of the police search teams. There are blue tents that have been erected, not the sort of forensic tents that you would associate with a search scene, but these bigger, sturdier blue tents where clearly they can gather, they can be briefed, they can store equipment in. We're told that today there is the likelihood of some thunderstorms around here, so that will be handy for them. Now, there are a small group of detectives from Scotland Yard who've come out here, but purely just in a sort of an unofficial capacity, just to observe what is going on here. There are German officers who are here at the scene as well. It was those officers who are conducting that investigation into the convicted rapist and paedophile Christian Bruckner, who asked the Portuguese authorities very specifically to carry out this search on their behalf as part of their investigation. What we don't know at this stage is just what information they are acting on. It seems pretty specific to be here, seemingly in the middle of nowhere, the Arad Dam, as I say, about 20 miles or so from Praia da Luz. There are indications now being quite widely reported in respectable news agencies here in Portugal that Christian Bruckner had lived in a commune for some time, about 7 or so miles from here, that he visited this area around the reservoir fairly frequently, that some reports indicating he described this as his little paradise. So I say we're so many years on, 16 years on now from the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, with no real clues as to what happened to this young girl, except the belief of the German authorities that Christian Bruckner is the man who is responsible for the abduction and, they believe, murder of 3-year-old Madeleine McCann. So the first of a number of days of searches. Say we don't know at this stage exactly what they're looking for, but clearly if they find anything at all that confirms their suspicions and the reason for being in here, then they will be here a lot longer than just the 2 or 3 days that they've initially set out for the search operation.
Mark White will be at the scene of the dam in Portugal for us throughout the course of the day here on GB News. But for now, let's hear from the former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley. He earlier outlined the difficulty of the search.
Been many a false dawn on this investigation. We've seen many similar searches of other sort of scrubland closer to where Madeleine disappeared all those years ago. So I hope this is very much a targeted search. And like, I guess, many other people, we would hope that some credible evidence is found.
Peter, I would feel better about this if they had Bruckner by the scruff of the neck, standing there with the search parties. Would that have been an option for them? Why would he not be there?
Well, he's currently a serving prisoner in Germany, so the logistics of getting him released from prison over there and then transported to a completely different jurisdiction in Portugal, legally wise, would have been very complex, but quite possibly achievable. I agree with you entirely. I'd have been much happier if he was there, handcuffed, directing the searchers to specific points of interest where credible evidence could be recovered. But I don't think that's going to be the case today.
Do you think there's any reason to believe that he would have had input into what is happening?
Well, he's been pretty firm in his rebuttals that he's responsible in any way for Madeleine's disappearance. So unless there has been some remarkable change of attitude and all of a sudden he's decided to cooperate, and I quite frankly have no evidence to suggest that is the case, if he has, then it would be a very different set of circumstances that we're looking at. But if he's remained his stance that Madeleine's disappearance was nothing to do with him, then I'm hoping they found some credible intelligence somewhere else that has directed them to this area, which is pretty substantial. I'm very familiar with Silvish and Praia de Luz. I've been to both of those places many times, and I'm just hoping against hope that this isn't another speculative box-ticking kind of exercise, and that once again credible evidence can be found.
Yeah, and all the while, this is hugely triggering, I'm sure, for the McCanns. You know, they've never given up hope of finding Madeleine McCann. I think just recently they marked her 20th, what would have been her 20th birthday. In fact, her little twin sister was pictured lighting candles. So I'm always mindful of that when discussing this story. But with that in mind and trying to be as tactful as possible, I'm interested to know what you think the chances are of finding any sort of remains, if there have been remains, in water for 16 years. I mean, teeth, bones, do they survive in a dam?
Well, I think it's only right, as you've mentioned, that we are sensitive around these matters. There is, of course, a deterioration of a body if it is in water, almost for any length of time, 16 hours, let alone potentially 16 years.
More on that story throughout the programme today. Now to politics, and Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary over potential breaches of the ministerial code.
Yes, the Prime Minister said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants explicitly for special treatment over a speeding fine instead of just requesting advice.
Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood. Tom, this snowball is growing.
It is indeed, and it's now into its third day with regard to this story. Suella Braverman has stuck to her line throughout the story, saying that this is a storm in a teacup. She paid a fine for speeding. She's taken the points on her licence and there's nothing really more to see. However, her detractors say that this was a serious lapse in judgment in terms of asking the civil service about the possibility of conducting what is in effect personal business, and that's an inappropriate use of government resources, of taxpayers' money. Now, going back to Suella Braverman's allies, they will say that, well, that resource was not used. She asked a question, that was refused, that was said that that's not something that they would arrange, and she said, fair enough, and took the points. They think that this is something deeper, that this is potentially a civil service that is trying to get the Home Secretary by leaking damaging information to the press. And so really that's why this story is growing more. You've got two entrenched sides who can see, on the one hand, they're saying, what is all this fuss about? And on the other, this is saying, this is someone who is not treating her role with the care and respect it's due.
And you mentioned the press there. There's also this allegation from the Mirror that a special advisor in the Home Office for the Home Secretary denied 4 times that there was even ever any speeding infraction.
Yes, and this is curious because Suella Braverman has stuck very carefully to the words that she is using whenever she's asked a question about this, whether it was in Parliament yesterday or speaking to journalists as well. Whenever she's asked, what did you ask the civil service, what did you request and when, what did you tell them to say perhaps, she is only saying, I was speeding, I took the points, I paid the fine. Those are her lines. I don't know if that was a Siri that was popping up then or whose phone. But back to the issue at substance, there is then all of this question of whether or not there was an attempt at a cover-up, and those questions will run and run.
What about Cabinet this morning? There'll be some frosty feelings, do you think, between the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister? And why do you think he's taking so long to potentially launch an investigation, taking his time on this?
Well, does he want her or does he not want her? What's your reading?
He needs her. And they're not from the same sort of wing of the Conservative Party, but we'll remember when he appointed Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, she'd left the role 6 days earlier after a technical breach of the ministerial code. She left Liz Truss's cabinet. However, she then was a supporter of Rishi Sunak in the subsequent leadership contest, the very brief leadership contest. And through that, she was rewarded with the position of Home Secretary being returned to her. Rishi Sunak needs to show, particularly the right of his party, that he is someone that can be trusted. And if he were to get rid of Suella Braverman, that would be seen as perhaps a betrayal to that side of the party. And that's why he's perhaps walking on a tightrope here. But you could clearly see his frustration in Hiroshima over the weekend when he was asked questions about this. He views this as a distraction that is very much not necessary when there is so much else in the business of government going on.
Well, he could squash it and he could get on with the business of the day if he wanted to. But I think lots of us share the frustration anyway. Tom Harwood, thanks very much for explaining all of that.
Thank you. The time, 14 minutes past 8 o'clock. Thank you for your company. Let's bring you up to date with the latest news situation. And 2 teenagers are believed to have died in a car crash before a riot broke out in Cardiff last night. Emergency services and riot police with dogs were brought in after over 100 youths erupted in a large-scale disorder for over 9 hours. 2 cars were set on fire. Several arrests were made. Up to 12 police officers may have been injured.
The Shadow Defence Secretary will today call for Britain's moral contract with the armed forces to be renewed. In a major speech later, John Healey will say Conservative failings have led to poor accommodation, falling morale and increasing departures from the armed forces.
Free Wi-Fi on trains is under threat. It could become a thing of the past as the government looks to save money on railways. The Department for Transport says it is reviewing whether free Wi-Fi delivers the best possible value for money. It says surveys show that passengers are more worried about fares, punctuality and reliability. Nor do they want to pay for their Wi-Fi, I would have thought as well. I would prefer to be a train driver on their salary than a bus driver on under £30,000 per year, says Mark. Look what bus drivers have to contend with. Cars, lorries, motorbikes, cycles, pedestrians, roadwork, traffic jams, awkward customers, antisocial behaviour. Train drivers sit in a small, secure room away from customer contact and drive down a track. That was so good, why don't you do it, Mark? Right, Premier League. We're going to be talking about the results last night, what they mean for Champions League qualification and the relegation zone after this. Don't go away.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:20. It's been a busy morning and there's lots more still to come.
You're kidding.
Yeah, 8:45.
more.
We're going to be speaking to an award-winning disability campaigner, Samantha Renck.
I know Samantha very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's she doing?
She wants to marry me. That's basically
Well,
what-
don't we all?
No, but she does. She's a bit besotted by me. But anyway, she is hosting this year's Blue Badge Awards. And these are very, very important because if you are of limited mobility, these reward exceptional accessibility and inclusivity efforts. That's too much eddies going on there. Basically, I know a lot about this after my own disabilities in the past couple of years, and it's a pretty lousy situation out there getting access to things. So Samantha Renke going to be talking about that.
And just after 9 o'clock, we have the lovely Eve Pollard with us this morning. She's going to be giving us her take on Suella Braverman and other big stories of the day.
Join in any of the discussions. We do enjoy listening to what you have to say. Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet at GBNews. We've got Paul Coyte. He's got the back page stuff for us today, and the big thing is, and it is squeaky bum time, I have to say. Top and bottom. Newcastle nip in there ahead of Man United. They've got the third place for the Champions League. They're 4 to go. Liverpool breathing down the neck of Manchester United. But United have a game in hand.
They do, but really Newcastle is the story. And actually, I say Newcastle is the story. Leicester are probably the biggest story because it was 0-0 at St James's Park. Newcastle have done what they need to do, so they're in the Champions League, which is all very good for the first time in 20 years, which is great news for them. But Leicester City have gone up there, and Leicester, as we know, are in all sorts of trouble. So they're in 18th place, and to go to St James's Park and get a result is very, very difficult. But they defended. They just defended. And, left out James Maddison out there, but managed to get points.
But look at the situation they're in. They've got one game left. I think it's against West Ham.
That's right,
And it's a cup final for them. It's do or die. If they win it, they stay up.
Well, yes, I mean, we say that, but it depends also because we've got Leeds. There's 3 of them, so 2 of the 3 are going to go. In 19th, we've got Leeds, who are on 31 points. They're at home to Spurs. They need to score goals because Leicester... And also, this is the other thing about Leicester. It's very good because it was 0-0, because if they'd have gone out and get spanked, then they would have been in trouble because it's goal difference is going to make a difference. So Leicester are also on 31 points. So like you say, they've got West Ham. And then Everton, 2 points above them, are playing Bournemouth. And Bournemouth have been very good. But all of them are at home. So 2 of those 3 will be going down. It's really, really tight. But Leicester, you think 0-0, not great, but I think it's a very, very good result for them yesterday.
There's 2 ways of looking at that relegation thing. You look like teams like, all of those 3, Everton, Leeds, and who we're talking about, Everton, Leeds, and Leicester. And, they could go down, but they could have the most amazing season next year. Walk away with the championship.
I agree. I agree. There's lots of fans that I've spoken to over the years, even going back to us back in the late 70s. And you've experienced it as a kid as well.
In the early 70s, the Man U.
And many supporters have actually said it was the best season we had.
It's a launching
because
pad.
You drop down and then you find that you're winning games. It's good for confidence, and then you can launch and then start again. So as bad as it seems, a club would never dream. They'd never want to drop down. But often fans that have done that and experienced it, but obviously you've got to be able to go up again, have actually enjoyed that situation. So it could be good for them. But then again, you don't want to get stuck down there because that would be a disaster because you want to be playing at the top table.
Well, there's every chance you'll get up between the qualification posts and the playoffs and whatever it is. Look, I want to talk about what's going on in Spain. Vicinius Jr., this young lad, and this is a story that's been going on now for 3 days or so. This is really foul. This really is foul.
It's horrendous.
That, whether someone in terms of their sexuality, in terms of their race, whatever it happens to be, is discriminated against in him. What's getting me is that there seems to be a tolerance in some sectors of Spain for this.
It seems that there's a bigger tolerance than you would ever imagine, and it is just incredible. Valencia, he played for Real Madrid away at Valencia. This is not just an isolated incident. This is just not a matter of there he is there. And this is not just a matter of a small section of the crowd. This is not just a few racists that are just shouting out monkey chants or whatever they want to do. This is a huge crowd. And Paul Vinicius Jr. is in the middle of this. Now, you would think that you would have La Liga would stand up against it, which of course is the league there, the main league. It's the equivalent to the Premier League over there in Spain. Javier Tebas, who's the president of La Liga, pretty much refuses to acknowledge it, refuses to do anything about it. He says that Vinicius, I mean, get this is what he said. This is the president of the league. It says he brings it on himself. I don't know how what does he bring it on himself? By the fact that he's black wherever he goes? It's an absolute nonsense. And he says, before you criticise La Liga, this is what he's saying to Vinicius. This is a 22-year-old young lad. He's come over from Brazil. I mean, he's a great, great player. He should be getting respect for the way that he plays football. But he faces this abuse week in, week out. It's probably the 10th time that he's faced terrible abuse. And he says that you should be getting properly informed. He has got the nerve to say that to Vinicius Jr., where, of course, it should be the other way around. So the fact that this is carrying on at all is a disgrace, and the fact that they're doing nothing about it makes it even worse.
Awful, awful, awful. Tiger Woods, he's pulled himself out of the US Open. I think that's next month. What's his problem?
Well, it's after the car crash, and let's face it, he's not getting any younger, 47 years old now. And so next month, the US Open, he won't be playing in that. He's had an operation on his ankle. Again, this is the situation. We've spoken about it before. When a sports person needs to think, right, is it time to retire? Do I carry on and let the career just drift and drift and drift? Or the mindset that actually thinks, you know, I can still play, I can still do it. But the chances of Tiger Woods winning another major is very, very unlikely.
And his body's just wearing out.
Of course it is, of course it is. And now you've got young golfers. You look at Brooks Koepka, who won the PGA Championship. These are all young, strong players. That, and really, it's a young man's game these days. And so for someone like Tiger...
That's the one thing I would love to get back in terms of mobility. I'd love to be able to swing a golf club again and not to any high level, but you know, just to play 6 holes or 9 holes. Are you a golfer?
Well, I had the most. I played in the Ray Clements Invitational last week. And
Did you?
Yeah.
What do you play off?
I play off very, very bad. It was 24, and I've got to tell you, I play probably the most embarrassing round of golf I think I've ever played. The other players were moving forward. I was left behind. You know, when you think they're not happy with this, and then I was getting more frustrated. I'm gripping the club hole. So I'm now thinking of actually retiring before Tiger Woods.
And I'm thinking of coming back.
Yeah, I think so.
There you are.
Maybe we'll meet in the middle somewhere. I hope so.
Mark Cavendish, one of Britain's most successful cyclists. He's calling it a day.
Yeah, he is. And... he's the best there's been. I mean, when you look at the Tour de France, I mean, he's the great sprinter. Tour de France, 34 stage victories in the Tour de France, which is equal to the legendary Eddie Merckx. And I've spoken to Mark Cavendish about this before. He says, it doesn't really matter, you know, it's not really about how... But when you're a sportsman, as we know, you want to win. And obviously this is important to him. So he is going to be in the Tour de France in July. He's going to take part in that. So all he needs is one more stage victory to become the greatest that there's ever been, Olympic silver medalist. And he really is truly one of our great sportsmen of all time. So he's going to call a day at the end of the season.
Well, whatever he goes on to do, we wish him all the best.
Maybe golf, maybe is the answer.
Maybe golf, maybe golf.
Yeah. Come round with us.
Paul, appreciate it. Good seeing you, my friend. Thank you very much indeed.
Do stay with us in just a moment. We're going through the papers one last time this morning, joined by Norman Baker and Anna Mikhailova.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
We're going to flick through the front pages for you this morning. Let's see what they look like. Daily Mirror, this police search of the Portuguese reservoir, which we're leading on this morning in connection with Madeleine McCann's disappearance. The details are there as they are on this very programme.
Yes, and the Eye this morning saying the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman's waiting to learn her political future amid claims she might have breached the ministerial code.
Daily Telegraph reports that the former Deputy PM, Dominic Raab, he's had enough. He's going to stand down at the next election.
The Guardian leading on thousands of hospital staff reporting claims of sexual assaults and harassment by patients.
That's a very good picture there. It was of Jude Law and I can't know who the lady was. Put me that, have you got it there? Alicia Bakanda, who looks very well, as does Joan Collins, we're saying there, who is celebrating her 90th birthday. So also the Mail is saying plot to drive out equality chief who's standing up for women. They've got a big feature on that one. She's been accused of trying to oust the chairman of the organisation due to her stance on transgender issues.
Well, we're going through the papers one last time with Norman Baker and Anna Mikhailova. Let's start with you, Anna. And look, lots of column inches have already been written ahead of Thursday's big announcement. We're expected to see net migration at a record high level. What are the current possible plans on how it could be fairly crudely cut, it has to be said?
Yeah, so the Times has got a story that Suella Braverman is going to announce a ban on most foreign students bringing in family members when they come over.
Is that big numbers?
So apparently it's going to cut the numbers by about 150,000. So it's not insignificant, but I think the strange thing here is the messaging. I mean, we're sort of getting one day ministers saying that student migrants are good and they boost the economy, and then the next day they're saying, well, actually, we're going to, because inevitably some of these students won't come. These are grad students bringing over, say, their child or their husband or their wife. So it's a classic sort of ministers can't really make up their mind.
Transitory migrants, wouldn't they? I mean, they're not people who are saying we're going to stay here forever.
I think it's a mix, but yeah, a lot do come and then go back, which also is no bad thing because it's soft power. It boosts our connections with the rest of the world.
It's just playing with the numbers, really, Norman, isn't it? It's not.
Well, it is, but I mean, I think what Anna says is quite right, and this is a perennial problem in government, because the Home Office, whoever's in the Home Office, always wants numbers down, and whoever's in the Department of Business wants numbers up, because they see the value of it. So I know that battle goes on forever, and probably always will do.
OK, Norman, vehicle thefts, this is something that makes me very hot under the collar.
Yes.
I watch a lot of these programmes on Channel 4 and Channel 5, and basically the police are overstretched. They haven't got the resources. They've got other things to concentrate on rather than vehicle thefts. What's the story here in the Times?
Yeah, this isn't just about police underfunding, I'm afraid. It's about technology, because vehicle thefts are up in England and Wales by a quarter in the last year, 130,000 vehicle thefts last year. And the problem is that this is down to technology. And according to the article here in the Times, and the AA is talking about this, that thieves use a variety of high-tech methods to steal vehicles. Techniques include relay thefts, in which thieves use relay boxes, one near the car and another close to the front door of the owner's house, where the car's key fob is usually kept, to extend the signal and make it appear the device is within range of the car. They can then open the car and drive off. So this device, these key fobs, which are designed to be safer originally when they were first brought in, as opposed to normal keys, are actually proven to be a big weakness in technology terms, and maybe we have to go back to proper locks.
Well, another thing that will happen is, I mean, I have a friend who recorded people outside his house doing exactly that, laying down these boxes or whatever. And the police said, oh, there's nothing we can do about it, because they didn't actually steal your car.
Well, it's not an offence to put a box down, I suppose, as the bottom line.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it happened to my parents, and they had the footage on CCTV of the car being stolen after the fob was recorded, and the police still said there's nothing that they could do, because by the time they actually responded to the call, a week had passed.
So this seems to be on the side of the thieves then. It seems to be balanced in their direction as well. So technology, not all it's supposed to be.
I should say that I'm personally protected, because my car's 1971, so it doesn't have these electronic gadgets in it.
What have you got?
1971 Triumph Hero convertible.
Very nice, very nice. What colour?
It's red.
Sorry, it's
red.
Red, good. And a black roof?
Yes, that's right.
Hide interior?
And I should tell you, if you're interested in biblical matters, that my car is the first car mentioned in the Bible. Do you know that? And Joseph rode through the desert in his Triumph.
Very good.
Very good.
Anna, we've been talking a lot in recent days, haven't we, about the blob's failure to burn this bonfire of EU laws. And there's lots of upset now about bananas. What's this latest twist?
Yeah, this is a perennial favourite.
Twist.
Bendy bananas are back on the agenda. So
abnormal curves.
Well, abnormal curvature is the specific word from Brussels. So top-class bananas should be free from abnormal curvature, according to the rules in Brussels. And this was meant to be scrapped, but then wasn't getting scrapped. And now, amid all the uproar that not enough EU stupid rules are being scrapped, the Trade Secretary is now saying that it's now going to be considered. And The Sun says that sources saying that this is all meeting resistance from DEFRA, so resistance from the civil service, the blob, as you say.
So, sorry, just explain this to me. Are they saying that bananas must look as pretty as possible?
Yes.
Right.
Perfect bend. Perfect.
That's what Brussels is saying.
Yeah.
We don't care.
We don't care. We want our abnormal bananas.
Twisted and gnarly.
But that is still being imposed on us. That's not going anywhere.
Being imposed on us, and it looks like there's no particular guarantee that it will stop being imposed on us at the moment.
I think we should just accept fruit and vegetables as they are.
Yeah.
We throw away a whole lot of decent food because it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Mad.
Well, supermarkets are starting a little bit where you can get the oddly shaped fruit, which you always should get, because there are probably less chemicals in that fruit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Anna, what I don't understand is, I understand that from a supermarket's point of view and a consumer's point of view, it may look good and therefore that may increase sales. But why would you need to enshrine that in law? That's my point.
Exactly right, Eamonn.
OK.
Hit the nail on the head.
OK. We go to the eye. Russian partisans fighting for Ukraine claimed yesterday to have launched a cross-border incursion. Tell us more.
Yes, this is this story about the so-called Freedom of Russia Legion, which claims to have liberated the village of Koldinska inside Russian territory. And the Ukrainian government says, not us, mate, nothing to do with us. These people are Russians who are acting on their own volition. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But, of course, we've got the Wagner Group for the Russian government, which apparently is independent or not, as the case may be. And we've got a similar lot of people now who are invading Russia. I just think this is a dangerous step because, it's one thing to have fighter jets and everything else protecting your property. It's quite another thing to invade another country, which is what's happening now with Russia. And I just think that's going to unnecessarily up the ante.
I was just reading during the sport, actually, some war reporting in the Telegraph today by Charles Moore, who's talking about those who've been injured during the fight for Bakhmut. There's a 90-minute journey to hospital and huge numbers of them are suffering shrapnel wounds, which involves heavy blood losses, and the vast majority of them, according to this report, are dying on the phone to their mothers. And it's just a real stark reminder, I think, as we're all getting a bit of war fatigue, about the human cost to this tragedy, really.
Absolutely. I mean, huge numbers of people who've been killed, seriously injured. Children have been abducted across from Ukraine to Russia, which, of course, is why there's a warrant out for Putin's arrest from the International Criminal Court. And even this lot now, the Russian Freedom of Russia Legion, apparently dozens of deaths in Russia now from this invasion by this partisan group.
Terrible.
Anna, well, Guardian is reporting that WhatsApp has announced an editing feature.
This is wonderful.
Why is it wonderful, Isabel?
Oh, because you know how many times... Well, no, but you will agree, because you are an absolute stickler for punctuation and grammar, and we often message each other and we find autocorrect messes it up. So the number of times I send a message, I don't read it before I send it because I'm super texting, and then I go, oh, that's horrible, and people think I'm stupid, so then I have to do an asterisk and resend all the corrections. This will just mean I can do it quietly without having to explain myself.
WhatsApp is saying they're going to introduce a feature that allows you to edit your messages within 15 minutes of sending them. So
perfect.
To exactly take away the asterisks that I also send, Isabel, so I'm glad we're
on the same page.
I think of all the things in the papers that we've discussed today, this is probably the one that people actually care about.
It might be useful for the Home Secretary when she realises she's sent a message to somebody.
Stop it.
OK, now, the big story of the day, ice cream.
Yes.
So just explain this to me. This is, I mean, a vested interest here I have in this, that where I come from in Northern Ireland, people think potato is the national dish and whatever, but it's not. It's ice cream. We have more ice cream parlours per head of population, partly due to Italian migrants, and the same will be in Glasgow and in Liverpool, who came to build churches at the turn of the century and whatever. But ice cream parlours are everywhere in Northern Ireland, everywhere. So what's the story, Norman?
This is in the Daily Star, and apparently it says here, ice cream makers are facing 99 problems. I'm sure that's a bit of journalistic licence.
Very good.
With flavours being cut to save cash. And speciality flavours like honeycomb, Eamonn, pistachio and hazelnut are being axed to keep costs down, which is a bit of bad news for those of you...
Is that because the honeycomb and the pistachio and the hazelnut are expensive ingredients? Is that why they're so...
It's not clear, but I think so. Pistachio will be more expensive, I imagine.
It's hard to beat a bit of raspberry ripple.
Honeycomb for me every time.
Yeah, honeycomb's a lovely...
salted caramel flavour of the day.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Anna, what would you lick your lips at ice cream?
Like raspberry sorbet. I'm a sorbet person.
Oh, well, that's much healthier. Lemon sorbet's good
I
as
think
well.
we should have some tasting in here, because last week on the programme you had people who were dunking sausage rolls and...
Yes.
Don't remind me.
Better ice cream.
If you were on death row, Eamonn, heaven forbid,
yes,
would ice cream be on your...
Yeah.
I think it would.
Something like apple crumble and ice cream and custard, all three together.
Would you have raspberry ripple ice cream with your custard and your crumble?
No, I would have vanilla. I'd have vanilla.
But it's a great flavour. Don't call it plain. It's a really great flavour on its own.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I just also point out in the Star, next to the ice cream story, there's one saying a Yorkshire pudding-based beer is going on sale in Yorkshire.
That sounds vomit-inducing.
I don't know, actually. I think we should try that as well on the programme.
So you would just swallow something that tastes like a Yorkshire pudding?
Yes.
Isn't a Yorkshire pud just the sort of pancakey taste? I don't know. What taste would it... Ooh, no thanks. But, OK, you bring that in, Norman, next time we're on, and we'll give it... We're game.
OK.
Well, I find if I'm ever ill in any way, the answer to it always is a Coke float. It's just Coca-Cola.
Ice cream and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I haven't had a Coke float since I was approximately 5 years old. Sorry.
Whatever floats your Coke.
Well, you're missing out. It's very good. It lines your tummy.
When did you last have a Coke float?
The weekend.
Did you really?
Yeah.
It lines your tummy?
Yes.
How so?
Well, it does. Well, Coca-Cola traditionally had cocaine in it, which then nulled the pain. It did, which nulled the pain. and so it gives your stomach a lining. So when you can't really eat food or down things or keep things down, sometimes to have a lemonade float or a Coke float or whatever is just very nice. And you know, in Northern Ireland we have red lemonade, brown lemonade, green lemonade. We have all sorts of lemonade. The lemonade man delivers.
Yes, you had to
different
deliver
colours.
to the door, didn't you?
Yeah. So, you don't know you're living. If you're not living in Northern Ireland, you're not living. You're not living. But that's all our national food. Guys, thank you very much indeed.
you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for your reviews today, Norman and Anna.
Let's bring you up to date with the latest stories now. Some breaking news coming out of Cardiff. You'll be aware that overnight, young people wearing balaclavas threw fireworks and missiles at police responding to a fatal car crash in Cardiff last night. Emergency services and riot police with dogs were brought in after 100 youths erupted in a large-scale disorder for over 9 hours and several cars set on fire and arrests were made. Well, in the last few minutes, South Wales Police Assistant Chief Constable Mark Travis has condemned those violent scenes after 2 teenage boys died in a crash in Ely, saying the level of violence towards emergency services and the damage to property and vehicles was totally unacceptable. It's a story that we're going to be following closely here on GB News.
Yeah, I wonder was that as a result of a police chase or what the anger is all about. We'll try and get to the bottom of that one. Figures out in the past hour show that government borrowing rose to £25.6 billion last month. £25.6 billion, second highest figure for April on record. The Office for National Statistics puts it down to energy support schemes, higher benefit payments and rising debt interest.
Drivers are being warned to expect long delays over the bank holiday weekend, which is forecast to be the busiest on the road since before the pandemic.
Busiest,
But it's also half-term, don't forget. Research by the RAC suggests more than 19 million car journeys will be made, with some journeys on Friday expected to take 3 times longer than usual.
Now, to encourage hospitality industry bosses to promote accessibility, the Blue Badge Access Awards recognises accessibility and exceptional accessibility through thoughtful design and innovation.
Some of the categories include the Access Champion of the Year Award and 2 Conceptual Design Awards, along with the Most Accessible Toilet Award.
Oh, well.
Important issues.
Well, I'll tell you, I could do a whole
book on it.
Book on this.
Maybe
accessible toilets, toilet doors that open in the wrong direction, have no bars inside. Oh, goodness me. Samantha Renke, one of this year's presenters, is joining us live today. I love you.
I love you too, and
I know
you love
you do.
ice cream, and I love ice cream. I miss you, Eamonn.
But you know, I think about you all the time because I've found myself wheelchair bound a lot in the past year. And I used to see you, you used to have to get out of a car and you were very self-sufficient, and then we would go up steps to get into talk radio. And I have to say, and I am so shameful of this, I didn't totally appreciate what you had to go through. And I swear, Samantha, every day, it's disgraceful. It is absolutely disgraceful. And that's why these designs are important. It's important having this and it's important getting it right. Tell us more.
Absolutely. I'm a wheelchair user. I've been born with a disability. I know nothing different, and my life can be challenging, but it doesn't come from my condition. It doesn't come from having brittle bones. Ultimately, it comes from living in such a disabling world. We can be lured into a false sense of security that the world is getting better. People like me have full range of facilities and access, and that's not the case. So it's really important that I'm able to use my platform to really highlight initiatives like the Blue Badge Access Awards that was, ultimately set up by disabled people for disabled people. Now, it's focusing on hospitality, the tourism industry. This award is very much about celebrating innovation, celebrating access, but it's about actually pushing these establishments to not just tick a box, not just go, hey, we've got a ramp, we got a wet room. Actually go in that extra mile. They are absolutely bound by the Equality Act, the Reasonable Adjustments Act, to make everywhere accessible, but when you have the word reasonable adjustment, that is a really grey area. And what that means is most places just do the bare minimum. So this awards is about, celebrating those who go the extra mile and actually recognise that, disabled people are human beings at the end of the day. We are, mothers, sisters, brothers, colleagues. We want to go out. We've worked together. You know what I'm like. I love my fashion. I'm quite sassy. I go out, party, and I want to live my life. I don't want to have to go somewhere and look at the access that they provide and think, oh, it looks like a blinking hospital, which is normally what we get. Disabled people deserve a lot more, and it's about time that we recognise that. We live in a consumer society. We live in a society that places so much value on what people can, give back to society, pay taxes, productivity. And unfortunately, we still think that disabled people don't contribute that. We're all at home sat on benefits, aren't we? We don't pay taxes. That is so far removed from the reality. Actually, the combined spending power of the disability community is £274 billion. And it's the largest untapped market. And it's the largest untapped market because ultimately, if I can't access your bars, pubs, hotels, I'm going to go somewhere else. If I can't access your online website because you don't have captioning or alt text, if I'm visually impaired, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go to somewhere that actually values me as a consumer and says, you know what, I want you here.
Do you know, Samantha, another thing I would say, a lot of people may be watching you and listening to you and saying, well, that's nothing to do with me. Doesn't, because I'm able-bodied, everything's okay. I was able-bodied up until a year ago, but I'm not now. And my life imploded. My life, all the things that I took for granted that I had to rethink about. So it's in everybody's interest to get this right.
Absolutely. Look, 20% of the UK population has some form of disability, neurodivergence or chronic condition. 80% of us will become disabled later on in life. That's a huge statistic. We've got an aging population. We are dealing with a mental health crisis. So this is something that will impact us sooner rather than later. And I think, if the pandemic has taught us anything, we're not superhuman. We are, subject to sickness and illness. And it's about time that we actually recognise that. Yes, it's morally the right thing to do, but also, we've got a law there and we need to adhere to the law. But what we want, people to really value disabled people and recognise that we're just human beings at the end of the day, and we deserve, to be celebrating. We deserve to go out and enjoy our lives. So this is why, the award ceremony is so invaluable. And you can nominate now. I'm sure you've got all the contact. So the award ceremony is going to take place in October, so you can get your nominations in now.
And we're looking, Samantha, I just want to tell people we're looking for best bar, best spa, best historic building, best conceptual design. The Lou Awards are there as well.
Important.
Yeah, it's all
Absolutely.
important. It's all very important.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
We'll send you both an invite as well. We'd love to have you both there.
No, listen, I'd be honoured.
Get
I'd be
Eamonn to
honoured
hand
to
out
be
an
there.
award.
Yeah, I would be honoured. And invite me to that other thing that you've been promoting, you saucy little minx, on your Instagram. On your Instagram, I saw you've been up to all sorts on that.
Too early in the morning, Eamonn. Stop stalking me to begin with. For goodness sake. If you want to see me, take me out for a meal and instead of stalking me online.
Okay.
There you go. Wine and diner.
The best blue badge areas.
Thanks, Samantha.
Samantha, lovely talking to you. Keep well. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Samantha Renke is a campaigner. She's host of these Blue Badge Awards, which are going to happen in October time.
Stay with us. Lots more coming your way. We're going to have more on the search for Madeleine McCann. It's believed that police in particular are searching one area of a reservoir around 30 miles from Praia de Luz, where Madeleine disappeared from 16 years ago. First, though, here's your forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office with your GB News forecast. A cool start out there, but plenty more sunshine to come, just like the last few days. Warm sunny spells will soon lift the temperatures. High pressure is in charge, not just today or tomorrow, but for the rest of the week And in fact, the rest of the month, we're expecting this area of high pressure to keep things largely settled. Not entirely sunny. There will be some cloud at times, and there'll be some cool breezes coming in from the North Sea to affect these eastern coastal areas at times as well. But having said that, for the vast majority, it is a dry and bright start to the day. I think there'll be a bit more cloud drifting southwards across the UK compared with recent days, and so less sunshine, I think, for England and Wales. And as a result, temperatures a little lower compared with yesterday, 21 Celsius, for example, in Cardiff. That's the likely warm spot. Scotland and Northern Ireland also sees fairly thick cloud at times, especially the north of Scotland, where there'll be a spell of patchy light rain and drizzle through the afternoon. That pushes through Shetland by evening, a break then from the cloud and rain, but there'll also be some additional patchy rain and drizzle coming into the far northwest by the end of the night. Elsewhere across the UK, clouds clear through the nights and temperatures fall. Single figures for many, but low single figures possible in some sheltered spots across central parts of the UK. Then we begin Wednesday with plenty of sunshine, eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales seeing the best of the blue skies first thing. Thicker cloud arrives from the west across Scotland, and we'll see some light showers affecting mainly central and western parts, drifting into the north of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. A bit cooler where this happens, but actually across much of the UK, it's another warm day with plenty of sunny spells and a brighter day to come for northern Scotland behind the cloud and patchy rain. Thursday, more widespread sunny skies and the warmest day of the week, if not the year, 23 or 24 Celsius.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Dubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rooms, apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Police begin searching a Portuguese reservoir for Madeleine McCann 16 years after her disappearance.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 23rd of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news on this Monday morning, police investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann will today search a reservoir frequently visited by the prime suspect Christian Bruckner. Officers have sealed off a stretch of the area which is just over 30 miles from where Madeleine disappeared in 2007.
Two teenagers are believed to have died in a car crash before a riot broke out in Cardiff last night. Emergency services and police with dogs were brought in after over 100 youths erupted in a large-scale disorder.
Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as he considers whether to investigate the Home Secretary's conduct. The PM is said to be considering emails that show Suella Braverman asked civil servants explicitly for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Dominic Raab has announced he's standing down as an MP at the next election. His decision comes a month after he resigned his cabinet position over bullying claims.
And members of the royal family have attended the Chelsea Flower Show, with the King viewing tributes to the late Queen. The Princess of Wales made an appearance where she met with pupils at the show's first children's picnic.
And we love to hear from you throughout the course of the programme. We've got another half an hour to get your thoughts in. We've got a slightly tweaked email address. It's gbviews@gbnews.com.
An active search for Madeleine McCann will recommence today for the first time in nearly 10 years.
Portuguese police will search a reservoir about 30 miles from where Madeleine disappeared on May the 3rd, 2007.
Now, the only current suspect, a man called Christian Bruckner, was said to have visited the reservoir frequently. He's denied any involvement from his prison in Berlin. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is at the scene for us this morning in Portugal.
Well, here at the Arad Dam, the police are here in numbers now as they prepare to begin what will be the first full day of searching at this site. It's about 20 miles or so from Praia da Luz, of course, that holiday resort where Madeleine McCann disappeared from back in 2007. I'm just going to step out of the way for a second so we can give you a look further down there. Now, what you're looking at in this area is sort of logistics base for quite a few of the police search teams. There are blue tents that have been erected, not the sort of forensic tents that you would associate with a search scene, but these bigger, sturdier blue tents where clearly they can gather, they can be briefed, they can store equipment in. We're told that today there is the likelihood of some thunderstorms around here, so that will be handy for them. Now, there are a small group of detectives from Scotland Yard who've come out here, but purely just in a sort of an unofficial capacity, just to observe what is going on here. There are German officers who are here at the scene as well. It was those officers who are conducting that investigation into the convicted rapist and paedophile Christian Bruckner, who asked the Portuguese authorities very specifically to carry out this search on their behalf as part of their investigation. What we don't know at this stage is just what information they are acting on. It seems pretty specific to be here, seemingly in the middle of nowhere, the Arad Dam, as I say, about 20 miles or so from Praia da Luz. There are indications now being quite widely reported in respectable news agencies here in Portugal that Christian Bruckner had lived in a commune for some time, about 7 or so miles from here, that he visited this area around the reservoir fairly frequently, that some reports indicating he described this as his little paradise. So I say we're so many years on, 16 years on now from the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, with no real clues as to what happened to this young girl, except the belief of the German authorities that Christian Bruckner is the man who is responsible for the abduction and, they believe, murder of 3-year-old Madeleine McCann. So the first of a number of days of searches. Say we don't know at this stage exactly what they're looking for, but clearly if they find anything at all that confirms their suspicions and the reason for being in here, then they will be here a lot longer than just the 2 or 3 days that they've initially set out for the search operation.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Eve Pollard's here with her opinions on what you've just been seeing there and the other stories in the news today. Madeleine McCann, we've all lived this through our lives. You know, for me, it was my holiday destination. It's where you would go to. And I think you were saying, Isabel, you just hold your children tighter when you see this.
I don't think I go on a single family holiday without thinking about the McCanns. It sort of haunts families, I think. It's just the worst case
I absolutely
scenario.
agree with you. I once met Madeleine McCann's mother, and I had no words, and I wanted to put my arms round her. But I think she's aware of that. She holds herself slightly aloof because everybody would burst into tears. I hope they do find something here. It just seems so long, 16 years. And of course, I'm just hoping it's not just a box-ticking exercise that the German police, knowing this man, Christian Bruckner, and he made phone calls, apparently, from this area at the time that Madeleine vanished. So they may have more information than we know about his guilt. But I just hope they can find something. What's terribly dangerous, it seems to me, is, A, can something survive so long? And the last people who searched in this lake said it was very, very dark. And you could only feel things rather than see things. Look, if I was them, the McCanns would obviously hope for the last bit, that they would find out what had happened to their daughter. Terrible thing. Terrible thing. We are now going to move on to disturbances overnight in Cardiff. 2 teenagers are believed to have died in a car crash. Then a riot broke out.
Yes, emergency services and riot police with dogs were brought in after over 100 youths erupted in a large-scale disorder for over 9 hours in the residential area of Ely. 2 cars were set on fire. Several arrests have been made in relation to the disorder, and up to 12 police officers have been injured.
It is an absolute scene of devastation. News editor for Wales Online. Let's go to Kieran Jones for his take on all of this. I mean, a lot of social disturbance over a long period of time, Kieran. What's your reasoning behind this?
Well, as we understand it, there was this very serious crash at around 6 p.m. last night in Snowdon Road in Ely in the west of Cardiff. And that very tragically has resulted in the deaths of 2 teenage boys. Now, subsequent to that, and for reasons that at this stage aren't entirely clear, there's then been this mass disturbance involving between 100 and 150 people. Now, it must be said, in the context of those numbers, probably not all of those were involved, and certainly some of what I've heard is that it was actually a very small number of people involved in the trouble itself. Lots of those that were out there were kind of worried onlookers and people trying to protect their properties. But as you can see from the images that you're showing now, there were cars tipped over, set alight, projectiles and fireworks hurled at police officers, police cars and damaged, and police officers themselves injured as well. So there was a very major response to this. You can see the police helicopter there in the footage that you're showing, and it's also been said that officers on horseback and officers with dogs were called to attend the scenes as well. And this then went on well into the early hours of the morning.
Cardiff as part of my beat for many years as a correspondent. And this part of Ely in Cardiff, it's a close-knit community. This is not your average Monday night in the area. What has been the reaction of the community to all of this?
As you say, it's a very tight-knit community, and I think that probably in part is why so many people came out looking to see what was going on, help one another and check on one another. It's very much not an archetypal Monday night. It is a very close community where people look to support one another. People know their neighbours and are very close to one another. So whatever it is that has sparked this will be fully investigated, and the police and also the Cardiff Council leader Hugh Thomas have come out this morning and said that there will be full investigations. We know that there were arrests made last night, and the police have said in their statement this morning from Assistant Chief Constable Mark Travis, there will be more arrests to come. There will also be an enhanced police presence now throughout the rest of the week and into the weekend, according to the police. So it will be interesting to see if there's any further tension. Certainly hope not, and hope that whatever caused this tragic collision last night, because that must not be forgotten about in all of this. 2 young people have lost their lives, and hopefully that can be investigated fully, and whatever has happened to lead to that can be established, and those people can be grieved for, because I'm sure there will be lots of grieving and lots of upset to follow now. And as I say, in this tight-knit community, people will probably band together to support the families of those affected by this tragedy.
Yeah, and South Wales Police quick to condemn the violence, particularly directed at the emergency services, whether that be the dog handlers, those who were driving ambulances, trying to attend those who were injured in the crash at the time, and 12 officers being injured as well.
Yes, I mean, we've not had any explicit detail on the extent of those injuries, other than to say, fortunately, they are not life-threatening. So hopefully those injuries are not too serious. We're not absolutely clear at this stage, and I think it will be throughout the day and probably throughout the week that more precise details on exactly what led to this and what happened has emerged, because so far obviously lots has been pieced together through social media, through some of the live video footage that was being shared. You know, some of this was being streamed live on YouTube as, you know, concrete blocks and fireworks were being thrown and things like that. So shocking scenes, but lots to establish as this investigation continues.
Well, Kieran, thanks for bringing us up to date. Really appreciate it. Kieran Jones there from Wales Online with the very latest from Cardiff. Eco-protesters from Fossil-Free London will demonstrate outside Shell's annual shareholder meeting in London this morning.
It follows a bumper year for the company in which they made record profits of £32 billion. Let's speak to our reporter Ray Addison, who's there for us. And Ray, I understand Greenpeace also involved in those protests at the AGM.
Yes, good morning to you both. Security here at the Excel Centre in East London say they're expecting hundreds of protesters here today at Shell's AGM as the argument and debate over the energy company's climate goals intensifies. Now, we were up at the top of those stairs where the protesters are a little bit earlier, but we've been moved by the media team. They're telling us that Shell don't want media to be getting pictures of those protesters up there at the moment, and that applies for all broadcasters. Apparently, of course, this protest being organised by Fossil-Free London. They're saying that Shell's oil and gas is driving extreme weather and climate collapse across the planet, and they want to hold the oil giant to account here today for damaging the planet. They're accusing them too of profiteering from the surging energy prices due to the war in Ukraine, and of course they're calling on Shell CEO Wael Sawan to actually shut the company down today and announce that I don't think it's probably going to happen. They say if he doesn't do that today, they're going to cause an avalanche of protest. Now, of course, for those here attending the AGM, there are conflicting pressures. Of course, on the one hand, there's the profits, those record profits for last year. Investors will be wanting to capitalise on that. And then on the other hand, we have these shareholder activist groups. And of course, they're pushing for faster action on climate change and higher targets. Now, one group called Follow This has actually filed a resolution at today's AGM calling for Shell to tighten its 2030 reduction targets for emissions. Mark van Baal is the founder, and I asked him earlier on how shareholders should be voting today.
Even more important to give a signal by voting for what you want. And that's more and more shareholders want the Paris Climate Agreement to be achieved, to make sure all pensions are safe, that people retire in a decent world without devastating climate change, and therefore vote for our resolution. I think it's more logical to first vote for a resolution, and if they then don't act to it, vote out the chairman.
Well, not surprisingly, Shell is urging its shareholders not to support that resolution, and it is unlikely to receive enough votes to pass.
OK.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Appreciate it, Ray. 9:30, Andrew and Bev on air. Guys, what are you talking about?
We're going to obviously talk about Madeleine McCann, but a great story in the Mail for the second day running. The splash yesterday in the Mail was about how many people now are driving under the influence of drugs. The police now have captured a woman aged 77, high on cocaine in Canada. 77.
Maybe that was to kill her pain.
Oh, well, she would have killed somebody in her car. And they've also caught a 15-year-old driving a car high on cannabis. It's against the law to drive a car at 15 anyway. This is a big story and they're going to have to get to grips with it.
It is, because we're not very good at detecting drug driving. So particularly young people are thinking, well, you can have some weed and get behind the wheel of the car, and it's problematic. We need to be talking about it a bit more.
And it also says to those people who want to legalise drugs and legalise cannabis why they're wrong.
Yeah.
I think.
We've also got more reflections on the Madeleine McCann situation, which is obviously a breaking story, a developing story. We've got Mark White out there, obviously, in Portugal. We're going to be talking to Mark as well this morning.
And we're going to Cardiff for the riots. We'll have someone on the scene to try and explain what triggered those riots. You don't expect them in Cardiff,
You
do
really don't. It's really peaceful, quiet.
Lovely city, capital of Wales. Quite astonishing.
Yeah.
OK, guys, thank you. Look forward to that. See you at 9:30. What do you do with a problem like Suella? We'll be asking Eve Pollard that very question after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
So what are we going to do with Suella Braverman? Most importantly, what's Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, going to do with him? Eve Pollard, he's got Cabinet this morning. I don't know if that makes her on the list, on the agenda, or they just ignore.
No, it's just awkward, isn't it?
Just awkward,
yeah.
just awkward.
It's awkward, and then she'll obviously have to have a conversation with Rishi, but as far as I can see, having read everything, she was caught speeding. Well, a lot of people know people. In London, you can be caught speeding for doing 23 miles an hour. So it's all rather difficult. So, OK, she broke the rules in that. But she probably... What I think, there must be this really horrible atmosphere. She turns around to a civil servant who she thinks is on her team, will help her, and say, I obviously would like to go to this awareness course, which is what most people do so they don't get the points. He doesn't actually fix it for her. He can't fix it for her. Perhaps it's wrong that she asked him. But she wasn't saying, I must. She was saying, is that possible? After all, if you allow a Home Secretary into a meeting with total strangers, who knows what may happen? And instantly it becomes hot news. And she's done nothing wrong. And we've already had the civil service have already got one scalp, which is Raab, who's totally stepping away from politics. Do you blame him? Why would anybody with any brains go into politics?
So you think she's been grassed on?
I think she's been grassed on. I think the classic thing, I have had wonderful staff, wonderful people working for me all my life. And so I could say, I mean, I never broke the rules in that way, but you could say, what would you do about this? Or how could you advise me about that? You don't expect somebody you talk to immediately go and tell the newspaper.
But I suppose the ministerial code is in black and white, isn't it? And if you do ask a civil servant to help you with something that is a private matter, that is a breach of the code, and therefore there is a dilemma for the Prime Minister.
But did she actually ask him to help, or did she say, is there any possibility? I mean, imagine being Suella Braverman, who has said some quite strong things, some would say incendiary things, about immigration. Would you want to go into a room full of totally strange people and do a course where I think it's quite a hard course, this awareness course?
Is it, Isabel?
It's very enlightening. It's very enlightening.
But, I mean, the fact is you ask a mate, you're working with people alongside. I just think there must be a ghastly atmosphere. I also think, I'm not sure the Tory party have realised, the 24 news schedule now blows everything up to an enormous event. So this has been going on for 2 days now. We're now at sort of world domination, shock, horror theory, aren't we?
Well, it looks ridiculous.
And
on
it's
the world
unfortunate
scene.
he was away.
It just looked embarrassing.
It does look embarrassing.
You've got President Biden there, and Rishi Sunak's being asked about. I mean, it's laughable.
It is
but
laughable.
You can understand it as a domestic issue, standards in public life. He's the one who, claims for the highest standards, etc.
Yeah.
It was his own words that have got him into this dilemma in a way. But yeah, I agree. It's so small fry with the problems that we face as a country.
It is. I mean, and I understand that but she's accepted these points now. She decided, OK, I can't go that way. I can't do this privately. So I've accepted the points. It just seems, as you say, a mountain out of a molehill. And, of course, this is what's going on. There is obviously a civil servant atmosphere that is not helpful to ministers.
So we think, I think by and large a lot of people watching and listening to us think it's a mountain out of a molehill, which is what you would tend to think as well.
I would think so. I mean, she's a woman. She's a woman of colour. That makes her also in the eye of the beholder. Just ask Meghan, she would say that. I think it's very, very difficult. I think if you can't talk to the people you're working alongside, who are hoping, what chance have you got?
OK. Now, the Chelsea Flower Show is underway. Let's talk about happier matters here. And if your back wasn't so bad, you would have been there yesterday.
Yeah.
It's all about weeds this year, apparently.
Weeds.
It was about weeds last year, which was, I mean, there's nothing wrong with weeds, and I have a few I'm very friendly with myself. He's just killed a small mite. Don't worry about it.
It's been here for 2 days. It's annoyed me. But it's here no more.
But I did used to love the Chelsea flower when it was inspirational. I'm not against weeds. I'm not against wilding. I can see why we need things to encourage pollinators into our garden.
The dandelions, apparently.
Absolutely. But I do love the idea where you used to see something rather beautiful that you could only, do in your dreams. I'd like to be inspired as well. I think there should be a mixture.
Bit of both.
But what was great was Princess of Wales went and she had a children's, I think there were guides, a children's sort of picnic. I've never seen that because Chelsea Flower Show used to be backed by, banks and large companies and rather posh event. Rather nice that she's got children involved because it's the one thing they can do with their grannies. As a granny, I'm pro that. And it's a lovely thing to see children enjoying gardens.
Well, can we just talk about your family very briefly, because we haven't seen you since the BAFTAs last week, and may we congratulate you on your very clever and witty daughter who made a very funny speech and paid tribute to you, which I thought was lovely.
Well, that was an accident, probably. I think she's done so well because I was out a lot. But she did ask for a dog, and everybody asked me. So far, no dog.
Oh,
but
come on, hubby.
We have hopes for the future.
Okay.
Love it.
Our future is 6 a.m. tomorrow. Eve Pollard, thank you very much indeed. So from Isabel and myself, we will say goodbye to you, hopefully to see you top of the morning tomorrow morning.
And we will hand over to Bev and Andrew with To The Point.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Good
morning.
morning.
To you both. Yeah, well, we're going to Portugal, obviously. Madeleine McCann.
Yeah. We've got Mark White out there. Who else would you want on the ground with a developing story like that? Everybody's got their fingers crossed for an outcome for the family. It's a really difficult story, isn't it?
And the breaking news overnight, riots in Cardiff. Why? We'll have someone there on the scene.
Yeah.
And also drug driving.
Drug driving, the new drink driving. The Daily Mail have got a bit of an exclusive investigation into that. The figures around it are really shocking.
And Prince Harry in court, we're going to look at the outcome of one of his six court cases.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office with your GB News forecast. A cool start out there, but plenty more sunshine to come, just like the last few days. Warm, sunny spells will soon lift the temperatures. High pressure is in charge, not just today or tomorrow, but for the rest of the week. And in fact, the rest of the month, we're expecting this area of high pressure to keep things largely settled. Not entirely sunny. There will be some cloud at times, and there'll be some cool breezes coming in from the North Sea to affect these eastern coastal areas at times as well. But having said that, for the vast majority, it is a dry and bright start to the day. I think there'll be a bit more cloud drifting southwards across the UK compared with recent days, and so less sunshine, I think, for England and Wales. And as a result, temperatures a little lower compared with yesterday, 21 Celsius, for example, in Cardiff. That's the likely warm spot. Scotland and Northern Ireland also sees fairly thick cloud at times, especially the north of Scotland, where there'll be a spell of patchy light rain and drizzle through the afternoon. That pushes through Shetland by evening, a break then from the cloud and rain, but there'll also be some additional patchy rain and drizzle coming into the far northwest by the end of the night. Elsewhere across the UK, clouds clear through the nights and temperatures fall. Single figures for many, but low single figures possible in some sheltered spots across central parts of the UK. Then we begin Wednesday with plenty of sunshine. Eastern and southern Scotland, England and Wales seeing the best of the blue skies first thing. Thicker cloud arrives from the west across Scotland, and we'll see some light showers affecting mainly central and western parts, drifting into the north of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. A bit cooler where this happens, but actually across much of the UK, it's another warm day with plenty of sunny spells and a brighter day to come for northern Scotland behind the cloud and patchy rain. Thursday, more widespread sunny skies and the warmest day of the week, if not the year, 23 or 24 Celsius.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.